will call the public hearing to order. We have a public hearing to receive comment on an amendment to the Irmo Town Code, Article 5, Finance, Division 2, Purchasing. Anyone who would like to address us on that issue, all we ask is you come to the podium and give us your name and address for the record. Anyone who would like to address the council on that ordinance change? See none. I will close out the public hearing, and then I will call the meeting to order, and I will recognize Councilman Hoops to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation.
Please on me, flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening asking your guidance and patience with us as we deliberate the business of the town. Let all of our decisions be in the best interest of our citizens and mankind. We also ask for a special blessing for our men and women in uniform that are in foreign lands fighting to protect our right to gather as we have here this evening. Bring them home safely. Bring them home to their families. They are missed. I ask all of these things in our Heavenly Father's name. Amen. Amen.
Next item on our agenda is the reading of the minutes of March 17th. Is there a motion for approval for the minutes as written?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
And any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor then of the minutes being approved as written, do so with show of hands. And next is the administrative briefing. Ms. Brown, anything you'd like to add?
Just a reminder that Saturday is our recycling event, starts at 9 o'clock over at Crossover Municipal. And also the property on the corner of Harbison and Harvard Court that we were dealing with about 2 months ago has been sold. Mr. Bill sold it. So that project is now not going to happen.
That little strip?
The little strip mall.
So,
see what the new developer wants to do. We'll hear more later.
Does that include the mattress store on the corner? Was that all part of that?
Yeah, we sold the whole project.
Okay.
Since we have a crowd here tonight, which is unusual, maybe we ought to tell them that it's electronic recycling, shredding, almost anything that you can't dispose of. Bring it to Crossroads Saturday, and Mrs. Buck will be glad to handle it.
Yeah, I think they were doing hazardous waste paints and all that kind of
Paints
stuff.
or any, a lot of things.
Tires and
That's all I have.
all right. Any questions of Mr. Brown? Seeing none. Next item is receipt of communications. First one we have is a presentation by Representatives Rick Quinn.
I got one before that. This is a quick one.
Oh, okay.
This is one that.
Their cancer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
If you don't mind.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
I'd like to introduce a lady, Miss Nicole Holland. She's not here? Okay, we'll come on up here anyway. I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, council, this young lady is a constituent Irmo. She's a breast cancer survivor, and she wanted to present a program to us. I don't know if you have anything you want to hand out.
Nicole is on her way. She's in the parking lot. She has the handouts, so when she gets here, I'll have them bring them up to you. I'm April Sampson. I am a resident here in Irmo, but I'm also a breast cancer survivor, as Councilman Walker just told you. I was diagnosed in 2013. Why is that important to you all? Well, when I got diagnosed, I realized how many expenses there are for women in the families who are diagnosed. 1 in 8 women are diagnosed with cancer every year, with breast cancer. That means 1 in 8 families, 1 in 8 people from Irmo, and it's expensive. My deductibles were $2,000 every year, plus your medicine and all that. And although I'm an attorney and I'm employed with the solicitor's office, I'm a prosecutor, so I have insurance, I realized that that's just not enough to cover everything. I don't qualify for any of the free programs or the programs that make things cheaper because I do have insurance and I'm employed. But I don't make enough. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have $2,000 sitting around for every deductible and medicine and all of those kind of things, and you miss work and your bills go up and that kind of thing. Based on that, I decided to start a nonprofit called In the Middle. And In the Middle is an organization that gives financial assistance to women who are financially in the middle, who make too much to qualify for anything but don't make enough to pay for it. And what I would like to do, and what we're bringing to the table for you all, is I know that we have this great new park over here, and what I would like to do is have an event for my organization, a walk/run that's in the park. We would be able to provide, with Strictly Running, to decide the route and all of that, and all that we would need from you guys is your support. What we're asking is to do it, or to tie into the In the Middle theme, because Irmo is in the middle of Richland County and Lexington County. We also would like to do it in the middle of the summer, so to tie it sort of with July 4th. Make it, even if we could, maybe a family fun day. The walk starts the day, and then the rest of the day be an event for Irmo, but also to not take anything away from Columbia or from Lexington that do the things. It would be something for Irmo, and something that we could do as a yearly event. I've put out information to different organizations and different friends, and I've gotten some great responses in terms of people who are willing to participate, to donate, and organizations are willing to do that. For example, we've talked to different organizations who want to come and set up booths or events there themselves. So we're trying to not to make it cost effective for Irmo, but to bring people to here. We kind of have modeled it in terms of the Palmetto Relay for Life. That started 20 years ago with just a couple of dozen people. It's now thousands of people, and last year they raised $750,000. That money only goes to cancer research. This organization is clearly different in that I hope that there's at some point a cure, but for now we got to help the people who have it now. So that's sort of the idea. No, it's Nicole. I know she's here. Nicole has, this is Nicole Holland. She has the paperwork and can give you more. She's an event planner, so she can kind of tie into what it's more about.
Okay. Basically, everything that April just summarized, we have on a sheet here for you. And it has the statistics, some of the things she captured, the history of the walk that we do in Finley Park in Columbia. And again, what we wanted to do was to have an event to tie it in with the 4th of July. And we had already lined up what the sponsorship amounts would be, what some of the benefits to the sponsor could be, what it would cost in terms of the individual runner. Again, as she had said, had reached out to Strictly Running. So we've done some of the due diligence in getting it going. But before we got going too far in it, we wanted to bring it to you so that, again, we could tie it into what we're trying to do to bring some awareness to the park. And maybe start off, and we had initial conversations with Councilman Walker, and he thought we could come here and present and possibly answer any questions you might have of us.
So that's kind of what we have.
Again, I wanted one of these ladies to come and present to us, and I guess your 4th of July is that
Correct.
weekend is what you're looking for the event,
This 4th of July.
and you probably need access to the park. Is that available, Bob?
Needs to come up and see Vi and fill out an application form, so we got
Okay.
it on record, she can reserve it.
I don't think we gotta charge them the normal reserve the park fee, if there is such a fee. But I don't think council has a problem with that. If you go to council town hall sometime tomorrow, or
I can do it tomorrow.
yeah, and to talk to Vi and reserve that park for your
Okay.
event. That way it's reserved for y'all, okay? And we can work on the details of what's gonna happen in the park that day coming up, you know.
Sounds good.
Is that good?
Sounds great.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
We're excited, and hey, bless you in your road to recovery.
Thank you.
One other group, I hate to take up all the time with city communications. One other group, Richard, I have another group I found that reached out to me. They are, Richard, if you would come and just tell us in briefly, or give us an idea of your organization.
We're supposed to use this to help people to hear me?
I don't know.
Can you
y'all
go
hear?
in the back with this? I don't know if it's even... It's off?
It's on.
It's on, okay. Well, I'm Richard Sherman, and I'm with ACTS Metro. ACTS Metro is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It's been around for 8 years. We're located across the street in Murraywood Shopping Center, in the back of Murraywood Shopping Center. And we are a nonprofit organization that mentors families in crisis for a full year. We have our own social worker on staff. We work strictly with the Richland-Lexington 5 school district, social workers within the school district, to identify the families in crisis so that we can pair up a mentor with each family in crisis that the social workers identified. During that year, our purpose is to take the family from despair and dependence to hope and self-sufficiency in a year. Councilman Walker came by and saw our facility. It's a very humble facility in the back of Murraywood Shopping Center, but we have a full load of wraparound services that we provide to the families right in this area, purely in the Richland-Lexington 5 school district. So I had a lot of things I could talk to you about what we do, but in the brevity of time, I'll get to what my ask is, because it's very similar to the one you just heard of. ACTS Metro, and I'm here with one of our board members, Desiree Allen, and Desiree has some information she could then share with each of you. We have an annual 5K, 10K certified run. So she's going to hand you out a flyer for all of you. This is the flyer on our run. We've been doing this run now for about 7 years. It's a certified run. And the run takes place from the Midlands Tech Harbison campus. It runs through the neighborhood, most of the way here, and then back to Midlands Tech. So it's right in this area. We have a whole boatload of volunteers that volunteer for that run, and it's our annual major fundraiser that funds most everything that we do at ACTS Metro. So my ask of the council is that we would have the council to authorize free police protection for us the day of the run in the neighborhood behind the campus there where our runners would be running. It would take maybe 5, 6, 7 officers just in key locations to provide 2 hours of protection for our runners to make sure that it's a safe event that we've always had. So that's my request today for y'all, and believe me, it's all of our funding and everything that we do is helping families right in this area. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
You also mentioned that ACTS Metro works with a lot of kids that are hungry after school, and I was very concerned when I found out the numbers that you were telling me.
I have some statistics that I'll share with you. That's just.
And this is in our community, guys.
This is right here. This is purely Lexington Richland 5 school district. In the school district, you have 17,118 total students. That comprises 22 schools. In those 22 schools, you have a total of 9 social workers. And of the 17,118 students, you have 4,995 students that are below the poverty level. You have an additional 1,034 children that are right at the poverty level. And you have 240 children that are homeless. So those are all the statistics provided from the school district.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I've got to actually, what I could do is I could give you one copy of my notes. I brought an extra copy so for your minutes you wanted into this. But it's 17,118 students in the school district, Rich-Lex 5, 22 schools. They have 9 social workers for all 22 schools. 4,995 children below the poverty level. And now those are the ones that qualify for free lunch at the schools. 1,034 children are right at the poverty level. Those are the ones that qualify for reduced lunch. And 240 children are homeless. Those are the ones under the McKinney-Vento law are allowed to take a cab to school, and the district pays for that from wherever they happen to be housed.
This is in our district too.
It's right here.
I was blown out the way.
6,000 kids.
Correct.
Yeah.
District 5 is known to be one of the better school districts as far as education is concerned.
Yeah. In a year's time, ACTS Metro last year, 10 of the families that we worked with were homeless and achieved living under their own roof with enough income from jobs to be self-sufficient at the end of the one-year mentoring program. 10 of the families we work with were homeless. Many of those families have anywhere from 4 to 6 kids. But we serve quite a few more families than that. We have families where it's a 2-income middle-class family, and then one of the spouses dies, and that suddenly throws the family into a crisis because they've always lived off 2 incomes. It's a variety of things. It can be a medical issue. It can be all kinds of issues that causes a family to go into crisis. Our only paid employee at Axe Metro is our full-time case manager, our social worker. Everyone else is a volunteer. I'm a full-time volunteer. So our ask is, if our annual fundraiser is coming up May 9th at the school campus, and we would like to have the police protection and to keep the run safe because it's a major event for us.
Okay, Council, I think that, thank you very much, Richard.
You're welcome.
I'd like to, do we put that on the agenda for a vote, or just, we do? All right, well, next meeting, then I'd like to have that on the agenda as an item to give it support for the run on that.
We'll have to find out what the route is, and that way the chief can look at it, determine how many officers and close all the appropriate roads and things, and what the charge, what it costs us.
Richard, can you do me a favor and get us an idea of what the route is gonna be for the run, and the date again, and exactly the times?
Okay, I'll
We
do
have
that.
it up for our next meeting, which is 2 weeks from, well, 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay,
We'll have it on the agenda for an action item for us to vote on.
I think that would be very important, because I can perceive that some of that route may go outside the corporate limits of the town proper.
If it's the same route they've used in the past, the vast majority of the route is not in the town limits.
It's in.
The start finish is in the town limits and the rest of it.
Right, that's why I'm saying that being it starting and passing through there, it's going to be some coordination with the county sheriff's department.
Correct.
For which we would have no control over funding for.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it's in my neighborhood, that's why
Yeah.
that's why I'm interested in, who knows, I might get my fat behind out there and enjoy them, try to run with them or something.
We
So
will,
paramedics out there?
we will definitely have the media there.
But, thank you very much, Richard, for presenting this. One more thing.
Oh,
Sorry, this is the last thing. And, did you, Mr. Mayor, have you gotten the finalized report from the Sheriff's Department on the investigation of the orchestra? No?
haven't got anything, heard anything.
What about releasing the preliminary reports you have? Are you ready to release
Well,
that?
That's kind of like a halftime score, and a halftime score has nothing to do with the end result, so it's kind of.
Well, a halftime score gives us an idea of where they're going with it, and I mean, we would ask you for it to pass. Are you still refusing to release the
Yeah,
preliminary?
give the final one out when they send it out, but that'll be the final one.
Okay. So the conspiracy to destroy the festival continues, okay.
Whatever.
All right.
Yeah.
No problem, thank you.
Let's see, now we're back to the item on here, presentation by Representative Rick Quinn, Representative Chip Huggins, and Representative Nathan Valentine. And what this is on the agenda for, there is a House bill out there that Representative Quinn has put at the State House that would eliminate pretty much business license. And so we as a council have asked to speak with, there's one right there, our representatives about this. And we had trouble getting all the meetings together, and so we finally invited them to come to our council meeting. And I guess one of the things that we wanted to do, based on the emails that's back and forth, is one, find out why you are supporting this bill when it could bankrupt the town, so to speak. And, what good will come out of it. And I know we've asked Nathan and Chip to remove their names from sponsorship, and we're still kind of in that same mental capacity that what we want y'all to do. Or explain to us why it's good for y'all to have your name on it and support it. So I guess we'll let y'all kind of start, and then council members can ask questions. When you
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly Town Council, ladies and gentlemen, and certainly Mr. Administrator, we appreciate the chance to be here this evening. We certainly probably didn't realize the controversy that this bill was going to sort of equate to. I know me and Miss Kathy were in the real estate business for a number of years, and this bill and issue has probably been out there for at least the 14 years I've been in the House to some degree. Probably the magnitude of this bill has not escalated as this bill has, probably because of the number that's in there. So the impetus of it in terms of streamlining, and businesses get sort of inundated with lots of fees and lots of licensing that they have to do when they do statewide business. Local businesses get inundated with licenses and fees when they do local business. So that's where this bill comes from. It really came from the outpouring and screaming from a lot of different businesses, entities, and those that have been hit with these fees and licensing that they're having to write check after check after check. That becomes very hard on a business. It's very hard for them to stay in business, having to do that with their time. And with that, I know Representative Quinn has a version that has probably gone farther than any other bill we've had with this. That's House Bill 3490. He's here to talk about that bill. Before he does, I'd like to applaud Mr. Richard and certainly Ms. Sampson. Thank you for your efforts with these wonderful causes. We will be on Friday at the Bilo on St. Andrews Road collecting for the snack pack for the Irmo Chamber. But we certainly understand and know the needs are there, and we thank you for all your great work there. So with that said, I'm going to let Representative Quinn come talk about the bill. We're certainly here together to talk to you and try to get some understanding. But I love the dialogue we're getting from it, because this has been an issue statewide that's been out there for a long time. I'm sorry that you are being put in a position where you're feeling, Irmo's done a great job. You're you're the model, and we certainly are not out to hurt the model. We just want to try to do some good with this statewide so we can get businesses a lot of help. So this is Representative Quinn. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and before Representative Quinn speaks, I want to give you all the answers that you're looking for, and I appreciate it. First came to me when Bob and I were at a chamber function, and he addressed some concerns, and y'all have seen the emails going back and forth and so forth. Hardy and I had the opportunity to have some breakfast at Lizard's Picket. We had a good conversation. We agreed to disagree, which, as y'all know, in politics is not an easy thing to do. You can disagree without being disagreeable. One of the things that I shared with Hardy, and I'll share with y'all, and I've been fortunate to be in office for 10 years, and one of the toughest things is, as y'all know as elected officials, is the different constituencies that you have to serve. And particularly, of course, we have the people, and their concerns. And Chip has talked a little bit about some of the outcry on businesses. Haven't had a lot from Irmo and Chapin. I've had a few that have had conversations, whether they be realtors or builders or small business owners, but the majority of that is not coming here from the local community. That being said, anytime an opportunity comes up where I can support businesses, being on the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee, I want to be able to do that. And so when Rick presented the bill, I agreed to sign on as a co-sponsor. Representative Huggins has mentioned this bill has been up, a similar bill in various degrees has been around for years. A couple years ago I supported one. That never got out of committee. This bill I think is scheduled to have a hearing soon, so it's good that we got an opportunity now to get us all together. I know we have a busy schedule. I shared with Hardy, I don't believe in pulling my name off a bill, and I'll tell you why. There's certain things over there in the General Assembly that I have tried to do and others try to do as well, and that's to try to be as consistent as possible. And one of the things since I've been elected is just, whether you call it a rule, a policy, a procedure, a belief, I don't endorse in local elections, no matter how good a friend I got or how many people are wanting that. So that's caused some hard feelings from friends of mine who said, Nathan, I need you to help me out, and I don't do that. But that's the consistency I do. Another thing I don't do is I don't name bridges and roads unless you're dead. And we all understand why that may be. We've seen some recent examples of that. And I actually had a constituent who said, I can't believe I'm coming to you wanting a road for my father, who had a great resume, sure. I mean, was a great individual, and we all probably would agree would deserve something. But again, consistency. I did not want to make an exception for that. Y'all know how Chip and I are as far as being fiscal conservatives when it comes to the budget and port. We believe in not having state dollars go to specific locations. We don't want our tax dollars going to Charleston to build a fountain and things of that nature. So we had a little, an issue, if you will, with the Irmo Veterans Park. And that put Chip and I in a tough situation, but again, consistency is what we went with on that. So lastly, where I'll leave you with that is on this bill. I don't remove my name off of it, and let me tell you, it's not on there to help me, and I don't want to speak for Chip and them, it's not on there to help us. It's on there for a couple of things. One, because in principle, I believe that we need to look and reform how we're doing the business licenses. Now, as Chip mentioned, and as you already know, y'all are not the problem. So we're certainly going to keep an eye on the bill, and as the sponsors, when we go up to amend it, whether it be in, I think it's going to go to Representative Huggins' subcommittee.
I'm
So
subcommittee chair on
he's a
that bill.
subcommittee chairman. When it comes to the floor, and this is nuances, I don't know if y'all want to take up your time, but if you're on the bill and you want to amend it, that looks a little bit better because people don't think you're just out there to kill it, and they understand, well, they support the concept, but I see what they're doing, they need to protect back home, etc. If we were not on the bill and try to do something, it looks like we're just trying to kill the bill. So that's another reason why I'm staying on it. I know that y'all want us off that, and I understand that. I'm glad that we're getting to hear more and more from y'all. We need to do this more often. As y'all know, the emails can get a little bit contentious. I came back from vacation and saw some interesting ones. But I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let Rick explain the bill. A lot of it y'all probably are familiar with. Some you might not be. You might still not agree with any of it, and that's fine. And what Chip and I and Representative Quinn want to do is make sure ultimately the bill that comes out is best for the overall state without infringing or stepping on toes and hurting the people that are doing it correctly. Y'all do it correctly, that's not the same in other municipalities. So Representative Quinn, it's all yours.
Well, thanks, Nathan, and I do appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you about this issue that I'm very passionate about. And I'm going to cover some ground, just if you don't mind, very quickly about how we got to where we are today. Because often I think a lot of the problems that may have existed between the perception, at least of the town of Irmo and maybe some other cities and municipalities, is a lack of understanding of how we got here. So in 2011, when I was sworn in, one of the major issues that came up during my campaign, and quite honestly has come up during my life in business to deal with, was kind of reforming the business license issue. And I'll get into what exactly are the problems as I see it with business license. But at that time, I met with Ike McLeese, who was the City of Columbia Chamber of Commerce head, and Otis Rawl, who was also with the State Chamber, and asked for their help in working with the Municipal Association to come out with a bill that would be workable for local governments and address some of the concerns I had. And so, every day we're close. We've been talking since '07. This was 4 years later, and we're getting close. And give us a little more time. And so, I did that, and in fact, had almost weekly conversations trying to find out where it was. And then fast forward a few years, Ike McLeese very tragically dies suddenly, and Otis Rawl retires from the State Chamber. So the people that were in communications with the Municipal Association were no longer there. And so when I went to the Municipal Association, I asked them kind of what was their work product, and essentially they presented me the model ordinance, which has really been around since I guess '04 maybe, that I can tell, I can track. And so there was a frustration level with from my part because it didn't really address the issues that were of concern. And so I started talking with other members, and we kind of looked at what North Carolina did, which is when they first started their reform effort, they had a $100 cap. So the people that I talked with, I said, look, I realize that this is not going to be what the bill looks like in the end, and in fact, I understand that we're going to have to deal with the $311 million statewide problem that exists. But as councilman, I hope you understand there are a large constituency of not only legislators, but there's also a large constituency of voters who don't think there should be any business license fee. And so as I told the Municipal Association, I want to work with y'all with an open heart and try to come up with a solution that helps everybody, but I'm not going to negotiate with myself on this issue, meaning, I could offer a plan that I believe in, but I know it'll just become the subject of attack, which is kind of what's happened with this bill. And so we put this bill in understanding that part of the purpose was to try to build a coalition, but also to kind of shake up the discussion, because frankly, since the Municipal Association conversations have been going on with the State Chamber and with other entities. By the way, we have members of the state representatives from the Home Builders, State Chamber, Realtors, I think were here a little earlier, and also Farm Bureau. But just to give you kind of this coalition has been meeting with the Municipal Association, and we basically have 5 things we want to see addressed, and to varying degrees. Some organizations, totally don't want to mess with, for example, how much money a government can collect. They want to change how it can be collected. Some groups don't want to see it at all. So But in terms of trying to deal with this and where we're just having our discussions with the municipal association, there are really 5 basic premises that I want to communicate to y'all that we feel is a problem and has to be addressed. And I'll do it very quickly because I don't want to monopolize all the time. The first one is the issue of gross income. As y'all are aware, the business license fee is collected against gross receipts, really, under the legal definition. And the gross receipts really don't have any correlation, not only between how much a business can pay for a license, but also what they should pay. If you look at gross income, it's going to vary dramatically between business types. It's also going to vary depending on the margin of the businesses. If you have businesses that have low margins, obviously gross revenue means a lot more to them than it would a company that has very high margins. But also, it's the issue of the fact that, you know, gross revenues. You could have startup businesses that plan not to make money. When I opened my business in 1992, we assumed we weren't going to make money for 3 years. So because we use gross revenue, there are entities that are having to pay tax even if they don't have the money to pay it. But additionally, there's some other things that happen where if you use gross revenue, obviously people are saving money to pay other taxes in their budgets, and the gross revenue includes the tax that we use to pay tax. So you're essentially taxing the tax if you use gross revenue. But also, you know, businesses are required to have a separate license in each city. I don't know if y'all are aware of how many cities are around statewide. Currently, almost 230 cities have a license fee. About 15 counties have a license fee. And so the result of that is businesses are forced to have separate licenses if they do any kind of even marginal business in different cities or towns. And just so for example, in Lexington, or I'm sorry, in the Midlands counties, there's 72 potential licenses that a business would have to have if they deliver a product or do business in various towns. Just in Richland and Lexington County alone, there are 21 different potential licenses that have to be held. So I talked to one business person and have asked this to be looked at more carefully. Usually compliance for a business is around 3 to 4 hours per license. So even businesses that have marginal exposure, you know, have 10, 15, 20 licenses. I actually spoke to one business that has 68 licenses, and they do very marginal business in these towns. And so compliance is a nightmare for businesses that move outside the boundaries of the city their business may happen to be located. There's also some unfair applications of the tax that are going on. Again, I would not say it's happening in Irmo, but you know, in some cases, towns are trying to collect worldwide revenue. If you wouldn't mind, I have to get some water if you don't mind. I'm going to bring this up so I can finish my short talk here. But in the city of North Charleston, let's give you an example. Boeing, the day the first plane flies off the tarmac in North Charleston, the city of North Charleston showed up and said, we have a $3 million business license fee bill for you, and by the way, we want to audit your books and get worldwide revenue. Well, Boeing decided, hey, we're going to hire a lawyer, we're not going to handle this the way they want us to, and now their fee is essentially capped at $1 million. And so the point being is that worldwide revenue was a major issue to Boeing, and in fact, Boeing, if you think of all the compliance folks they have at Boeing, they didn't even know the business license fee was coming until it came. So the other thing I would tell you is the classification system. I understand that that was one of the reasons why I was asking for y'all's classification system. It is the system. Every town does different things. Most of them have tried to adopt the model ordinance, but most of them also amend that model ordinance in certain ways. And of course, the North American Industry Classification System, which y'all use, and I understand why you're using it. You're trying to deal with a tax that is applied to gross revenue, and you're trying to come up with a way to classify different businesses so the tax can be fair to those businesses. But the problem with that system is it's set up as a statistical analysis device. It's not set up to account for business size, profitability, even whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit entity. It's used basically for the Census Bureau and the Office of Budget and Management to come up with these employment reports and different sector reports that it comes up with on a quarterly basis. They even say in their own rules that it should not be used as a regulatory classification list. Finally, there are inconsistent things that are done from city to town. The definition of gross receipts, just to give you an example, it only is supposed to be applied to income that is accrued by the business. And so if a business has, for example, trust income, or it divides commissions between different individuals, or if it gives a refund for example, for a purchase, those are not considered as gross revenue. There's a lawsuit going on right now where a city, for example, with a realtor, Ms. Condon, I know you were a realtor, gross income, let's assume a $103,000 house is sold. The gross income for that sale, if it's a $3,000 commission for the agent, is $3,000. You have a lot of cities that are applying $103,000, meaning the total sale price of the house. And that's not what the law says. The municipal handbook even tells you shouldn't do that, but cities are doing it. And so basically this classification system is being used to kind of, I understand cities and towns are trying to get around how hard it is to deal with the gross revenue. So they have varying systems that are very different, and the compliance again becomes an issue, but also the fairness of an issue where you have larger businesses who can afford to hire lawyers or maybe have political pull. They get breaks when the little guy doesn't get them. And so that's one of the concerns. And the very final issue is the fact that South Carolina is becoming non-competitive. And we have to take a look not only at local fees, but also what's going on with the state. And the state can't affect federal, obviously. But North Carolina recently moved to eliminate their business license. They actually had a reduction in their income tax rate too, scheduled into North Carolina's plan. Georgia and Florida have also they've actually passed reform bills where they have different systems now from ours. Where, for example, in Georgia, only 100% of the gross revenue can be taxed. Municipalities can't apply more tax to that. They also have professional license fees, which, in other words, if a home builder comes into a town, they have a maximum rate. And they've also cured some other problems that our law has. For example, with the home builder situation, just what they call stacking. So if a home builder is paid $100,000 to build a house, and let's say that there's $80,000 expense for that house that he uses for subs, the home builder has to pay a tax for the total gross revenue. And in many cities, the subcontractors who are receiving taxed money from the builder, they have to pay those subcontractors individually. And those subcontractors have to get business license fees from the towns and cities in many cases they are working in. So in that situation, they're stacking exactly how much is being charged by their licenses by having multiple layers of licenses. Georgia and North Carolina, Georgia and Florida have appeared to cure that problem. So we have to see that there's a competitiveness issue here statewide. It's an issue that if we don't address, we're gonna start losing out. South Carolina is 48th in the country in personal income. We're one of the poorest states in the country, and the only way we're going to change that is to spark the entrepreneurial spirit. Now, what I come here tonight to ask you to do is, I understand that y'all want to collect the revenue that's for the services that you have to provide. I understand that, and I'm willing to deal with that issue, as I've said in my letter and multiple times that I've met with the Municipal Association. But I ask for y'all at the same time to understand that these concerns are legitimate, and let's try to come together on a reform bill that will allow you to do your job as town councilman, but at the same time have a fair, transparent, and just system for taxation for business licenses. If we can work that out, I think not only will the town of Irmo be better in the long run, it'll certainly, as a state issue, take a major impediment we have to dealing with how poor our state is by making our state a more business-friendly and easier to comply with in the business environment.
I'll let any of y'all go first.
I'm sure there's nothing political about this, I'm sure. But do you all, the legislature, plan to reimburse us for 47% of our budget, which will cut the police force in half, the landscaping department in half? We'll have a skeletal crew that will almost be rendered ineffective. See, and we can't charge millage. We don't want to anyway, because we really believe people shouldn't be taxed as much as they are. We can't even do that because of your law that says you can only go up so many percent a year. Well, so many percent of zero is zero. So there's no place to replace this money in our revenue. And I can tell you, every citizen in this town expects police protection and for this town to look good, and we do. And we're very transparent. We're a hell of a lot more transparent than the state. You can see every check that's signed and exactly what it went for, the invoice and everything else. And I resent this. I think it's very political. I understand what you're saying about businesses. Take it off your end. Or give us back municipal funds that you took away during the recession. There's a lot of things here. And you need to consider what you're doing to the town of Irmo and the town of Chapin and every other town. The big cities have already come up with ways to charge the businesses for the same amount they would be getting for the normal business license. They're already coming up with it. So this may be ineffective from the get-go. It's not us. It's the city of Columbia. It's the city of Greenville. They're going to get that money. And I don't think there's going to be many ways around it. But I understand what you're saying, and perhaps you're right about every town charging all these different licenses. But I understand that. But it's our livelihood. And short of taxing the people, it's the only way we can replace 47% of our budget.
Well, Ms. Kathy, I'm sorry, Councilman Condon, I've known you for a long time off and on, so.
We have fought together many times,
That's
as
true.
I have with you two, too.
I mean,
Let me tell you
as
what,
I recall, I
Mac
was.
2 took his name off that bill, Nathan
Well,
Valentine.
I know you did.
All
Well,
right.
Ms. Kathy,
Mac 2 hurt us, and I appreciate, I'm gonna send him money tomorrow.
Well, Ms. Kathy, what I would say to you is I want to restate what apparently has been lost in the fact that, because I understand that from your email that you're angry about the bill being filed. I'll
I'm angry
restate.
that you didn't think I knew the definition of obtuse, too.
No, ma'am. I wanted to make sure that it was clear to the vast email chain that was out there. What I would say to you is, just to restate it, if there's a fair bill that we can come to an agreement on that would allow you to collect the exact same revenue you're collecting now, if it's a fair bill, I'll support it and I will work for it. I'll make it my bill. I don't want to have a red herring being when I was asked I asked Municipal Association to give me a fair bill, and they came back with a model ordinance that had been around for more than a decade. My point to you is, I'm willing to work with you to make it workable for the town of Irmo. But the second thing I'd say to you is, let's don't fool ourselves. This business license fee is being paid by everybody that trades with these companies, and
I understand.
so to act like the business license fee isn't being paid for by the taxpayer, generally speaking. Home builders, when they build a house, that's built into their price. When somebody, I talked to a durable medical goods company, Ms. Kathy. There's some towns where, and this fellow is a small entrepreneur. Grandma needs an air tank and a breathing device, and she doesn't have any family living. She's still trying to stay in her house. He delivers a tank to that house. They show up on a business license fee from him. His point was, well, if Amazon sent this to them, they wouldn't be paying that fee, right? And as I mentioned in my email to Mr. Brown and others, there are some things that I think that are unfair that have to be addressed on the city side. This is a two-way street. If y'all would work with us and have an open mind, so much of this is a paradigm shift. I believe one of the things we're talking to the Municipal Association about is a centralization for collection at the Municipal Association's office, very similarly to they do debt collection for the town. Just think about how much more revenue you would collect if businesses knew that all they had to do to be compliant was go online and pay their license fee and be compliant with the license fee. And we're talking through things like that now, where it would take some of the enforcement off your backs as to town. So I just ask you to have an open heart. I know it's an emotional issue. I've dealt with them before. I think it's important we all keep cool heads and have an open discussion and dialogue between us, because if we're going to make our state more competitive, we have to work together. And it's not my intention to try to bankrupt the town. I spoke with Brian about that earlier, that whatever bill eventually, if there is one that comes out, I assured him that I would not be in such a way that would detriment your ability to pay for your services. But what I would say to you is, I ask, if you defend the entire system and don't embrace even the slightest change, it makes it difficult for a legislator to try to work with and bring a coalition together to build a consensus. I mean, I think there has to be some agreement that there's some problems with the system. And if we can start from there, then I think we can work through this. I really do.
I have to write a check April the 15th to the Department of Revenue, just as I do quarterly. Maybe you could come down on that, 47%?
Oh, well, and Ms. Condon, I tell you, part of the bigger macro picture of this, the canary in the tunnel is dying for America. Let's just be honest about it. Last year was the first year in my lifetime that the net number of businesses in America actually declined. It's the first time in my lifetime. It's compliance, taxation, all the other things that are going on. It's too hard to be in business anymore. I mean, if I hadn't opened my business in 1992 and was able to overcome the hump of the initial investment and setting up support systems, I don't know how you do it for a small business person in particular. So I agree with you. I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm getting beat up by some people by talking about reducing the income tax. And once you include federal and state and this alternative minimum tax thing they talk about, which affects almost every business person, you're already on nearly half their income before they pay the first property tax bill, the first bit of sales tax, the first license fee. And so I get that, I understand, and I agree with you.
Well, I want to thank y'all for making this appearance today. I mean, it's historic to have all of our representatives here at our chamber, our council meeting, and addressing this situation. I know you could have went any other council meeting in South Carolina to defend this, but you chose to come here, and I appreciate that. It shows us that we have a really good relationship with you guys. Our point, I guess, it's not like we're not willing to address or to embrace change. I don't think that's our problem. Our problem is that the way the laws are written now, with us not being able to impose a millage rate again, because we have a zero millage rate, we can't replace any kind of a law any kind of revenue that we lose from having a cap of $100 on a business license fee. So if you concurrently change that law, at the same time you go about imposing a cap of $100, it would make our life a little bit more easier, I think, as far as a municipality to recover some of the revenue loss, so that we won't have to cut our services by 50%.
Well, and Mr. Walker, I would say to you that I would be open to any change in that regard if we can address, from a systemic point, the compliance for the businesses that are having to live with this. I would be willing to look at anything. In fact, I've mentioned some things in my email that I know will be political hot potatoes with some folks.
And Nathan and Chip, I don't know what your I guess your criteria for putting your name on a bill or supporting a bill or not supporting a bill. I understand you're saying you have certain things you don't do as a representative, and you're consistent about it. We've been consistent about trying to cut taxes for our constituents, and we did it back early on in my career as a councilman, and we don't want to have to reimpose another tax to bring it back. I'm sure, one of the few times I think this council is united on this. We do not want to impose another millage rate if we can avoid it. But at the same time, we have one of the best, horticulture departments, public services department, one of the best police departments. We can't afford to lose half of those, that revenue of those people, because we don't have the money to pay them. So.
Well, one of the things I think we ought to put on the table is, what y'all. I am not criticizing you for adopting the model ordinance, but that sliding scale where a company that if for example Walmart, not to pick on Walmart, I understand why they want the sliding scale, but if Walmart does $10 million for the money, everything they get, every dollar they get, they have a reduced rate, and the more they make, the less they pay on the rate. If a company like Hoots Supply only makes $999,000, why was that smaller business forced to pay a higher overall rate? I don't understand that. I mean, to me, you talk about regressive. I mean, you're actually charging more per dollar on small business than big business. So, those are some things that I think we ought to look at that would free up the town, I think, in many respects.
A couple of things. I know that you mentioned tonight several times that we have the model ordinance. We follow that model ordinance. And I know I've had lengthy conversations with you, Rick, over where we were as to whether we had a discounted rate, and I even misspoke because of when we made our change over to the NAEP system that eliminated that. If we have a model system, I've looked at our application for a business license, and it's very, very simple. And if someone does business from Lexington, comes into the town of Irmo, let's say to deliver that bottle of oxygen to the grandmother, and they're required to have a business license, we do not look at their gross income for Lexington and Swansea and North and all of that. We're just asking them the business that you do in the town of Irmo. Now, by using that form, it's very simple. About 4 lines that they would fill out. Why? It looks like we're looking to try to go, as you just said, maybe a statewide system.
Well, part of the problem, I'm sorry.
And if we're going to go to a statewide system, you asked for some suggestions. One big one would be, if we go to a statewide system, let's have a statewide form, an application. You know, I don't particularly like the state income tax form. In fact, I despise it. But they won't let me use my own form. So I have to use that. If we went to a statewide system and we required everybody to use that same form, we might clean up some of this shenanigans that goes on with larger municipalities and some small ones that just feel like it's their inherent duty to twist the law.
Well, I don't disagree, Councilman Hoots and Harvey. I tell you, you know, to me, when I think of this issue, I would expect, knowing what you and Kathy and Paul and I went through with the City of Columbia's annexation in Irmo. This is my hometown too. They had a shoestring, you know, a foot wide and mile long, and for your average heating and air company or your average landscaper, it can be a challenge as to what's in the town, what's out of the town. And my point to you is, you know, there are technologies that we could use on the internet where they could put the address in and figure it out right away, and that would allow for compliance. You know, that I tell you, one of the things I had a moment where I just decided this was a passionate issue for me. And I could just give you 30 seconds to tell you about it. I was speaking to a group. You know, as you know, many of you know, I have a marketing company and direct mail company. I was speaking to a group in the upstate, and after I finished talking about the business topic, some of them knew I used to be in politics and I was majority leader, and they asked me what should be addressed now to make the business environment better. And I brought up business license fee. And then a young man, when I say he's young, he was probably 31, asked me to go have a cup of coffee after the breakfast. So I went with him, and he was a plumber, had worked in a restaurant to get his license, and got compliant, took his test, went to work for a master plumber for 4 years. That's how long you have to work for one to become a master plumber and go off on your own and have your own business. And he started putting in these tankless water heaters. And I guess he was putting in the Renais, the expensive ones that aren't in our houses. But he had a high school diploma, and not making any kind of commentary about his intellectual ability, but he was not trained necessarily on the art of compliance for government regulation. Well, he come to find out that he was working for a home builder and doing a lot of work, kind of stopgap for these home builders, and over a 3-year period was doing a lot of work in municipalities that he didn't realize. And so one of them called him one day, and he had no idea what a business license fee was. They came and audited his books, and they presented him with a fee that was so large that he was really unable to pay it. And because, look, this guy didn't understand. Maybe he was charging too little, but at the same time, he was not even unaware the tax existed. Well, he's working for that master plumber again that taught him it bothered me that we killed the entrepreneurial spark that was in that young man. And he was trying to provide for his family and make jobs for other people and be on his own. And that the lack of kind of continuity with these 242 taxing authorities that are out there on this issue killed him. And I made it my mission at that point to try and fix that. And that's one of the reasons I'm standing before you today, because I'm trying to do what's right for the state. I'm not trying to hurt the towns. Look, I grew up in Irmo. I mean, I consider this my home in many ways, still, even though I live across the river now.
Rick, can I ask a question?
Sure.
We talk about the number of businesses actually decreasing. What's actually happening is the big guys are eating the little guys. Every time a Walmart opens, a hardware store or a local shoe store goes out of business. So what's actually happening is not that there is a lack of business, it's the big guys that eat the little guys, and it's continuing. We also have seen the development recently of, within the last 10, 15 years of internet marketing. I think we have some 35 to 40%, the last I heard, of every sale of every product in this country was now being sold over the internet. So what's happening is, your example of the oxygen was perfect for what I'm going to ask you. The oxygen could be sold by Amazon. Amazon would pay no sales tax, even though it's been sold in South Carolina. And Amazon would basically have no business license fee. If the legislature, instead of coming in, and I mean, you know and I know that a $100 cap business license fee is ridiculous. You know, we got our legislators here now having their names on a bill to cripple this town. That bothers me that we're so intransigent we don't remove our name from a bill like that, but okay. But before we start, you know, going in and making wholesale modifications to a business license ordinance, if we could find the additional revenue from the people who are actually doing 35 to 40% of the business, you generate the additional revenue, and the necessity for the large license fees can actually come down because there's more revenue. Now, when we were having the fight and Nikki Haley did not want Amazon.com to come to Lexington County, you know, the issue was raised, hey, what about sales tax? What about business license fees? I mean, it certainly seems to me that the legislature wants to do something to correct the issue. You know, let's make sure that we have got a level playing field, and these internet marketing companies are paying their fair share of A, sales tax, and B, business license fees. If you do that, you generate significantly more income for the municipalities, both by way of sales tax and business license fees. And with that additional revenue, you can basically then have a corresponding decrease in what Joe the barber is paying, or your friend who is installing the water heaters. I mean, what we're doing is looking at one piece of a wholesale problem in a microscope, and we're our friends on top of each other trying to kill each other. You've got a much larger issue here that the State House ought to be addressing, which is basically making positive that 40% of the retail market is paying its fair share of the cost of doing business in this state. All of that's just, nobody's talking about that. We're now fighting with each other over local business license fees when the fat cats who are doing all the business, or at least 40% of the business, are basically walking away laughing at all of us. No sales tax, no business license fee. Yet they're doing 40% of the business. What's up with that? Why can't we make an intelligent look at how we get our money out of them, get that revenue stream turned on, and then come back and say, okay, with this additional revenue stream, let's basically then go back and look at capping Joe the barber, or the gentleman with the hot water heaters. I mean, right now, the bill that you've got, and you've gotten all kinds of venom from these nice people, because they know that you're going to basically cripple us, and we've been fairly responsible financially. You know, we know that y'all took a bunch of money from us, which you haven't given back. When you had the Depression hit, that money never came back. So, you limit how we can raise money. You tell these folks that they can't have but business licenses, property tax, and franchise fees. That's it. And fines, that's it. We've got a municipality in this county right now that's running its entire municipal government on fines. So they're basically encouraging the cops to basically give traffic tickets so they can have enough revenue to pay to the garbage, to have the garbage hauled. But my point is, you know, y'all need to take a look at not just the microcosm of, hey, business license fees. Let's look at what's actually going on here. You want to really make a difference, let's go and check out, you know, Amazon and its friends, and let's turn on those revenue streams, and then we can basically come back and talk about adjusting these revenues in a way that's equitable.
Well, and you mentioned the term intractable. I mean, I would say to you, no offense, but you know, Walmart or the other retailers who are getting the advantage of the sliding scale, meaning you make more money, you pay less. I think that's just as unfair, Jay.
Look, I hear you, and I think that that comment makes all the sense in the world. But what are you guys doing to basically go collect? You know, we're talking about peanuts here.
I mean,
Yeah.
and you're hitting it on the head, and just to show you that we are in tune with that, I've got a bill, and is it going to be in CHIPS? It might be in CHIPS committee next week. I filed it 4 years ago, 2 years ago. It can never get out, but it addresses the internet sales tax collection.
And we ought to talk to the chairman.
Well,
How
he's
about
not,
the-
yeah, he's
how about
on
not
one
only-
vote.
how about not only internet sales tax,
Yeah.
but also internet business license?
Well, and that, so this is why this is good. I didn't even think about that part of it when I filed it 4 years ago and 2 years ago. But that would actually bring, I've had an estimate from the Board of Economic Advisors, that's $198 million. Now, keep in mind, you and I both know, everybody's supposed to be paying that now on the tax return, but they're not.
They're not,
Exactly.
nobody's paying.
Here's the issue with that. So my bill simply says when that comes, when Congress has to pass that. And they passed it in the Senate, it got stalled in the House, but they're addressing it again. My bill, and this is why I'm glad you brought this up, my bill simply said, let's take that money, the $198 million, and let's put it to roads. But now you've given me something else to think about. Perhaps we can do an amendment to address something to offset. But we do think about that, but that's even bigger than us.
That
That's
is
the
coming up
Congress.
next Wednesday afternoon.
You know, just to tell you, as a little aside, I was the first bag boy at that Kroger Save-On over here. And let me tell you what, it was a black tie event when they opened Kroger Save-On. And you think I'm joking? I am not kidding you. It was black tie. And I had a headhunter came and got me to quit being a bag boy at Kroger. A guy named Virgil Linder up in Linder Supply, just down the road here. And you know, businesses like he was a small hardware store. And you know, to me, what Jake mentioned is true, but it's also the fact that we're giving the competitive advantage with that sliding scale to larger businesses who compete with guys like Virgil. And then he hadn't been there for years.
Paul, you have anything?
What's the likelihood of your bill passing? Where is it right now?
Well, and again, I'll say it again just to make sure I'm clear. I don't think it's likely to pass in its current form. What I would say to you is I've had 3 separate meetings with the Municipal Association. And if we can come to some agreement, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get a bill that's reasonable passed, that's fair to everybody. And you know, part of that is building public support. And so you know, that part really hasn't begun yet.
Real quick, and just along that line, Paul, just sort of from just the general feeling here, and you don't know how much we appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you. I know there's been a lot of concern here and all this, but if the monetary piece, where it does not affect Irmo or anything like that, is to a agreement, would the compliance pieces of this be something that you all would be willing to look at? Because the compliance, I can tell you, in the 14 years that I've been hearing about this bill and hearing about these concerns from all the people, I can tell you compliance has been the number one thing. And again, I hear you with the money, and I can tell you nobody wants to hurt the town of Irmo. I mean, Paul will be running over me on Irmo Drive. They're not here for that. But we are here to try to figure out some ways that we could get some help with this in some ways that would be beneficial to you as well. Would you all be willing to listen to that and try to help us in those regards so that we can keep the money where it needs to be, but make some strides in where this has been a real problem on businesses and folks in the area?
The first thing I would say is take the $100 cap out of the current bill, take it off the table. Then you might prove to somebody that you really mean you don't want to hurt the municipality, not just Irmo at all. As far as the compliance, instead of waiting on somebody else to give y'all something, just do it yourself and give it to the municipal association or municipality. You know, I think Rick made the comment that the municipal association, you asked him to send over what was fair, and they did. He didn't like it. They sent over the model ordinance, which is the current thing. So accept that. If there's some parts of that, the 5 things that you mentioned that are not good, then you make the changes that you think is fair and come back. I don't know why they need to turn anything over and say, okay, we're going to come back with this, when, in my opinion of what the model ordinance is good. I'm a small business owner. I pay that fee. It's less than anything else I pay. It's ridiculous to think that anybody's wasting their time calling y'all and complaining about it. I really don't believe it. In the town of Irmo, for $100,000 revenue, they pay $180 a year. That's minimum. If they're doing $10 million, they're paying $18,000. If it's capped at $100, a small business is going to save $80. A big business is going to save $17,900. So it doesn't sound like it helps small business. It sounds like it helps large businesses. And that discount, the reason Irmo did that years ago, we had a business coming in, I think it was a car dealership, and we had a scale that you pay this much on this much. And we did that to discount theirs to help them as a big business. One of the things business license fee is to cover is all the police services that normally like a Walmart would need for the shoplifting and all those kind of accidents that happen in the parking lot. With a car dealership, I don't think anybody's going to be shoplifting an automobile too much, or maybe one a year, but there's not the same probably need in some of those things, and that's why it's discounted. So to hear somebody say that we're penalizing somebody for giving them a discount on a large end, to me is just twisting it all around to the other way. I didn't get offended at all when we gave them a discount, because I know for my $150, $180 a year, I get what I pay for. I've had police officers call me at night because I left the door open in my shop. I got something for that. I don't mind paying it. I've talked to businesses about annexing into town and about a business license, and once they determine what it is, they don't complain, because they knew they couldn't hire a 24-hour security guard, 90-year-old, to sit in their shop 7 days a week, 24 hours, to do the same things they get for that. The times that we respond to fire alarm calls or burglar alarm calls, false alarms, it's minimum for what they get out of there. I think we figured out based on hours, and this may not be all over the state, but it's less than 0.2% of the gross revenue. That's not anything to be concerned about. And the form, as Harvey said, is very simple. If they can figure out how to fill it out, I think any businessman can. If they can't, then Lord help them in whatever else they do. I don't know. We can all come up with stories about the guy that's the plumber. I know a story of a guy that was a painter contractor, had 15 employees. He reduced them down to 4 after about 4 years of sitting at a computer trying to keep up with workman's comp and unemployment. Y'all could do something about that. That killed his spirit. He just said, no, I'm not doing it anymore. He spent too many hours a week trying to figure out that instead of operating his business. And the 15 employees were not doing their job, and he couldn't keep up with it. So he got rid of all of them and started back over a smaller crew. A couple things that you had mentioned about the coalition. You know, that gross income revenue thing too. It's very easy for a business like mine, and probably any business too, to say, oh, I made a profit, I got to pay a business license, well, I'll just give myself a bonus. Get rid of the profit, get rid of the business license. I don't think that's very fair to people that are not going to cheat. You know, so basing it on a profit is, and there's no way for us to know. If we had to ask somebody to give us their tax records, we can look on that and see what their gross revenue is and know that they could not. To ask every small business to turn over their stuff so we could audit them to see if they're paying us, that would cost us more than it's worth. It's just not really, you know, some of the things that you're talking about, the subcontractors, the stacking, that may happen somewhere. I know I've talked to the mayors over in Lexington, and I think here too, if the general contractor comes in and gets the business license first, then that covers everybody else. If they want to come in and do some general clearing of the land first and do all that, then yeah, they're going to pay one separate.
Mr. Hardy, I would suggest that you talk to your town administrator. That's exactly the polar opposite of what the Municipal Association Handbook recommends. So that's one area. That's one area where
I'm just saying,
we were of
I know
contention.
cities that do it just the opposite of what you're saying. Now,
Well,
maybe
they're not following the
some
model
that do
ordinance.
it that way, but I think trying to scattershot is not the same as trying to fix those individual problems. You know, and I think if I heard you correctly, 300 million statewide loss is
It's 311 million as of 2012.
is what the business revenue.
Probably more now. Well, it definitely is more now.
And that's a lot of revenue for a lot of municipalities. As they said before, you know, it's 47% of our revenue. We look at laying off 47% of our people, or bringing back the property tax. And if we could, and if we did, the property tax on a commercial building is going to be more than the business license, as I can probably assure you. So, you know, we're shooting them in the foot doing it that way. I can understand some of the complaints. And you had made a comment too about the bigger companies in the political pool. I can assure you that if I call Nathan or Chip or whoever else in the State House, yourself included, I'm not going to have the political pool that Amazon, Boeing, or any of these other companies or some of those general contractors that pay $18,000 a year. I'm sure it's going to help them, but it's really not, in my mind, helping small business. I am one. I I don't see it helping me whatsoever. And I know from the political perspective, it's not helping the municipality. All I can say is, if you want to fine tune something, if you want to fix the problem, but not, this is not fixing the problem, this is creating a bigger problem. You know, we have that local government fund. I don't know how much of our courthouse fees go to the state. We get very little of it. We're supposed to get some of it back.
What's the percent?
93% goes to the state.
And
Every
we don't even get
traffic
none of that back. You know, it was based on an agreement made years ago with the State House that we would get, all municipalities, all counties would get 4% of the general revenue. And y'all decided that because the funds were low, you would take it from there. Well, 4% of 340 million is less than 4% of 240 million. So there was already a hit taken by the municipalities and the county. And then to turn around and say, well, we're just not going to do that. We're going to scratch off that law for a year. You know, it doesn't give me a good feeling that the people that represent us up there, that they're really looking after the municipality, looking after the people that live in that community. You know, we do a good job. Maybe some people don't. That's not really my problem. And I hate to say it, but I don't think it's Nathan and Chip's problem. If those municipalities are in their district, it is. But there's probably a better way to address those people. I mean, it's like saying, we think some people steal, so we're going to arrest everybody and put them in jail. That ain't the way it's worked. I mean, you kind of go after the people that are creating the problem and you fix that. You know, I've got a report here from the police department that goes over all the stuff that we have to do under this thing. And there's a lot of stuff that those businesses probably don't even consider that's done for them. When there's an accident in front of their business and somebody shows up and gets that car out of the way and gets traffic flowing and gets people in their business, they don't understand, oh, if we had to get back, get cut back, all that was stuff. As far as, what is that pizza place? Down the road, CC's. Yeah. We patrol that place at night and assist them when they go with their cash deposit. Stuff like that would stop. We wouldn't have the resources to do any of that. You know, coming to us first before y'all put your names on it and asking how's this going to affect us, it's probably the same, I would think, anybody that did put their name on. If they went to their municipalities and asked, you know, and I'm sure Mac Tola knows, we hadn't talked and found out, oh, I don't want anything to do with this. That's why they took theirs off, because it's not, and I'm just going to say it's not a big deal. It's not addressing the problem. It's like, well, I'm going to just say $100, get some attention, and hopefully somebody fights back with something better. I would, if I was with the municipal association, I'd say, okay, let's do, I don't know, $100,000 a year max. Let's start there. That's just as ridiculous as the $100. I mean,
yeah, I'll say it again. I'll say it again for the fourth time. I'm willing to remove that $100 cap if we can come up with a fair bill. And additionally,
and come up with something. That
well,
you think
that's what I'm doing, Ms. Hart.
addresses these 5 issues.
That's what I'm doing, and I mean, quite honestly, you know, you sound like to me. I understand perspectives. You know, you don't want any change. What I would say to you is that I just don't think you're talking to enough people. I mean, you know, it's not just Rick Quinn sitting here talking about it. I'm doing it in response to legitimate concerns I brought and mentioned to you, and I think for the most part, in my travels, you know, I've talked to a lot of people about this, not just y'all. There's a lot of concern about how to comply with 242 different taxing entities in a state as small as ours. And it's gotten to the point where that compliance is problematic for a lot of businesses and a lot of people.
Well, I would imagine anybody that does business in 243 locations has somebody that does that, and it's probably a full-time job. So I still don't understand why it would be a problem.
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, they're 21 in Richland and Lexington. You know, we all, I mean, you know, I've traded in all those areas, and what I would say to you is that I understand your perspective, and that's why we have a democratic process.
$25 for the out-of-town contractor that comes in and does one-time business. Is it $50 or?
It depends on the amount of what he's going to do.
Does every town have that? Does every town like have a
I wouldn't know.
we all have a
If they
rate.
have that model ordinance, I would imagine they do, but they may not, but I would imagine.
If you adopted the model ordinance, you collect twice the rate from out of city businesses than you do from in-city businesses. So,
How many people use, of the total, how many use the model ordinance?
you know, I've asked the municipal association that, and they always, I think in our conversations, they say that 70% of the towns and cities have adopted either the model ordinance or some semblance of the model ordinance. And quite frankly, y'all are not exactly the model ordinance. So I mean, I'm not saying that critically, because I understand as a town, you try to adjust how you apply the fee to deal with problems that come up that are significant to you. And I'm not blaming you for that. I don't, as I think was said in one of the emails, I wasn't trying to find discrepancies. You know, I was trying to understand what your local concern was, so I had a feel for it. And frankly, I've done that with, literally, I did Skip and Chapin. I think I spent 4 hours talking to him. You know, I'm trying my best to come up with a bill that would allow the cities and towns to function, but that's fair. And all I ask is your help, and not just to kick what's on a bill number at the State House, realizing that I've written you and now told you 4 times tonight that I'm willing to address the concerns you have about the revenue of the town.
Well, I think that to answer your question earlier, if the town would be conducive to looking at and working with you, I think absolutely they would. We're going to look at protecting our finances, and there's got to be some ways to do that. And you know, we did it when we moved to the NATE system. We made a quantum leap there. So I can't believe that anyone would think that Irmo would not be willing to negotiate and work with you to have a good bill. But when there's something in the bill that just smacks you in the face, and I don't mean to beat this $100 thing to death, but it does, it's an arrow coming at you that you're trying to figure out how you're going to dodge, and you lose sight of the rest of the ordinance. And again, if we're a model ordinance, and that may be the wrong term, maybe we're not perfect, but who is? If some people are doing a better job of it than others, then let's build something around them. And I think that we will be looking, you know, with a magnifying glass as to what comes out of that. The thing that scares us, and talking with other people around, is so many things happen at the State House, you know, in the dead of night. You and I both know when the budget is being put in. How many of you go home at 5:30 every evening when you're in budget week?
None of us.
How many of you make it home by 10 o'clock on budget week? We're already in bed when you're signing off on a bill and taking a vote. So that scares some people. And it's all communication. And I feel much better about some of your concerns being our long conversations and what you brought to us this evening. But boy, I felt a whole lot better about knowing about that before I saw it on a piece of paper that it was going to be a $100 cap.
Yeah, well, I assume, and I think one of the issues here is maybe, you know, I've been having conversations weeks and months before I actually filed the bill with the municipal association. Maybe I shouldn't. I view them as y'all are members, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I had conversations with them literally 2 months before a bill was filed. So, Harvey, I understand that. You know, we all represent our constituents the best we can.
Yeah, and I wanted to make that point too. That you know, we're looking at Nathan and Chip as representing us. You're representing another small. You're just another Chip or Nathan over in Lexington.
Well, and I'll tell you.
You're not speaking as the Speaker of the House for the whole state.
Well, and I'll tell you. You know, Steve McDougal in the town of Lexington. I mean, talk to him. You know, one of the interesting things about where we are is I think the municipal association is at the table because Steve forced them. He realizes there's problems. He realizes the model ordinance is the best you can do under current law to have a fair system, but it's not a fair system. And so he's actually pushed them to come meet with us. And what I would say to you, Harvey, is, I think a communication beef that y'all should have is with the municipal association. The fact that I was talking with them literally 2 months before this bill was filed. I mean, in the 8 years I've been here, there's been 8 years they've been talking to the municipal association. There's been 23 bills filed, 23. And maybe I shouldn't have. I took under the pretense that y'all were members of the association, and they all knew it was coming. And I even asked them for multiple occasions, what about this plan? I gave them what I believe it should be in terms of the collections and how the fee is applied. And they referred me back to the model ordinance. So.
And Mr. Mayor, I'll take, I wish I had brought this to you. I'll tell you, 23 bills, like I said, over time, and I think this is the first conversation we've ever had about a bill like this. I consider you our dear friends, and I will certainly, if this ever becomes a point again, we'll have this conversation before you get blindsided. And sorry you got that feeling, because that was not the intention here. This is a bill that we've had for I don't know how long, except the money part. And the money part probably does make it very much, like Harvey said, stand right in your face. So I appreciate that, and that's why we're here tonight.
Any more questions?
I got one. Okay, you guys understand the federal legislation part better than I do about the sales tax and all that. What would prevent me right now from sending a letter to Amazon.com and every other online retailer asking to audit their records to charge a business license fee for what they've sold in Colorado?
I think it relates to their nexus. In other words, if you are a company that has a tax nexus in South Carolina, you become under the authority of that governmental entity, and that was why Amazon, they wanted a 5-year. Well, actually, they wanted a permanent tax.
Sales tax.
Right, and
this is business license fee.
Well, my point to you is it's a nexus. It's a legal tax nexus.
Think how much stuff is being shipped into this town from
and Jay, one of the biggest problems with the bill in Congress is the different people, what tax rate you use. Do you use it, if I'm Amazon sitting in Connecticut and I sell to South Carolina, do I charge South Carolina or do I charge Connecticut?
We just want the sales tax based upon the business they've done here. Not the sales tax, the business license. What would stop me from sending in the bill right now?
Call Joe Wilson. I think that's something you could ask him.
Yeah, unless there's a nexus, unless there's a tax nexus in South Carolina, Jay, they're exempt from tax.
But it's a nexus because the stuff's here.
Well, that's Amazon's unique problem. See, Amazon is really a arbiter for businesses all over the country, and so they're unique in that regard. But I think other, Overstock.com, for example, or other groups where they actually deliver the product, in a different way than Amazon, it's even more problematic. But look, I'm willing to explore that. I mean, it's actually something that years ago we looked at. And
You're talking about again, I'm dominating the ship, but with all the online retailing, you guys ought to be helping us find a way to extract some. They have a competitive advantage over mom and pop. Already they're not paying the sales tax, and now they're not paying a business license fee, yet they're doing business in our town.
You know what's worse, Jake? Here's what I heard when I was in Washington. So that John Adair, I'll use him as an example in his piano shop. So somebody will go in there, spend all day, he'll have to explain it, talk about it, here's all it does and everything, and then if they can go get that online, they get it cheaper, and they've wasted his time doing that.
And don't pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
We're going to discuss that Wednesday. This bill has made it as far as the Senate, but it's never gotten any further than that.
If y'all don't have any more questions, we appreciate it. Took so long to get together. Yeah. Thank y'all for the time.
We will. With email.
Yeah. We'll let you know.
Keep us in the loop.
Yeah, and I'll try to work on my grammar.
Good. Yes.
You do it.
Thank y'all. Have a good night.
All right.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let's see.
I need a shower.
Oh.
Yeah.
You did good, Kat.
One other thing, one other receipt of communication. I had received a letter, March 26th from the Arbor Day Foundation, and this is a release, and I'm gonna give it to Al or somebody over there, for the Irmo News or wherever. But it's just that Arbor Day has again, I guess, I don't know if you call it whatever you would call it, recognizes again Tree City USA. And I think that's just their way of saying it's been renewed. But they did send out a little release, so I will give that to the newspaper and they can print it and run it.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you, Joe.
Next item is, is there any other receipt communication?
Well, I hope I don't know.
We'll run through this as quick as we can then. Presentation by citizens for things that are on our agenda. This is where anyone who would like to address Irmo Town Council on anything that's on our agenda may do so at this time. All we ask is you give us your name and address for the record and what item you want to discuss.
Peggy Grillet, 304 Cross Creek Court in Columbia. I want to speak on the agenda item under new business, item D, about the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club agreement. As you know, we received a recent letter from Rob Brown, acting commissioner for the Okerstruck Commission, asking the Women's Club, since we have a monopoly on Okerstruck sales, to pay 20% based on our average of the last few years' gross receipts to the Okerstruck Commission. This really hurts the very core of our fundraising efforts, and we wonder who would step up in our place. The money raised has been used to support local projects and charities such as the Irmo Branch Library, Dutch Fork and Irmo High School scholarships, Sister Care, Healthy Learners, the School District 5 Snack Pack Program, Camp Chemo, Sharing God's Love, Canines for Veterans, Town of Irmo Arbor Day, the Honor Flight, and the Greater Federation of Women's Clubs South Carolina. Our contract states all revenues generated from such concessions shall inure to the benefit of the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club. As such, we simply do not agree with changing our agreement, and we ask you to uphold our agreement as originally stated.
May I tell you just one thing? This is on the agenda to ratify or not ratify because we've been told it's no longer binding. That's the only reason it's on there.
Okay.
And we do that every 2 years with a lot of our contracts. Because as people up here change, it negates a lot of agreements, a lot of memorandums of understanding. That's the only reason it's on there.
You never did that before.
Yeah, it's right here, North Myrtle Beach Police Department in Irmo. They had an election. We got to update the contract.
You never ratified.
No, not in 40 years. That's why it's not binding. All we're going to do is vote to bind or not bind.
Well, we can debate it when we get to that section, but.
Okay. We also have had legal counsel on it, and our legal counsel has advised us that it is a binding contract. It is an agreement. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address council?
I'm Ronnie Dula. My father owned the home furniture and appliance company on the corner, and now I'm the sole surviving family. And up until just recently, the property has been put in probate, and it finally got resolved. Probably 3 years ago, my brother, when he was living, together he and I decided that we wanted to fix up the store on the corner and put it back into the condition it was back when it was built, although it does have the brick front on it. We weren't planning to tear it off, but we wanted to remodel the store, and since it was considered to be part of a historical building in the town of Irmo. And so we went through the process of having drawings made with the Palmetto design or whatever in Irmo, And we had all the parking and the layout of the building, what we were tearing down, what we were keeping. I met with Mr. Brown, me and my brother, and we came over, and I think we left a set of plans with you.
I've got them.
Yeah. Anyway, so we had the intentions of moving forward with the project, and not long after that, he had a heart attack and died. So that put a kind of a hold on everything. Now I'm wanting to get started back up, and I want to fix the building up. And I'm not sure if there's going to be any issues that might cause me to halt on what I want to do, such as the possibility of the parking or whatever. I guess maybe when we let the plans, with all the time that had passed by, that I guess we just assumed that everything was okay. And so we were, like I say, we were in the process of moving forward until this problem happened. I want to move forward. I really want to fix the building up. I've got quite a bit of experience living in Charleston, working with the ARB in downtown in the city when I do work as a contractor there. I also done work with the ARB in Columbia on rehabbing historical houses. And I really want to fix this building up and make it a very nice focal point for the town of Irmo. So I have not only a personal attachment here, but also property here. So I guess I'm.
We can discuss it later, and we might bring it back up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming I may need some of y'all's help.
You have any questions now? So we'll maybe bring it back up when we get to that on the agenda.
And in the book here, the building is listed on page 121. And my brother and my father and my mother and me were also listed as the patrons in the book as well. So I really want to do well to Irmo by fixing this building.
And that building's been there since?
The first building was like 25 by 50, 55 feet long. I think it was built by Mr. Weed. And it was built in 1929, and when I was tearing out a lot of the drywall inside, I actually found a carpenter and signed his name and wrote 1929 beside the front door. So I'm assuming that's when the building was built, and then my father added on the 2 wings on each side as he needed to grow his business. And that's the only part that I want to keep out of the whole structure, is just the original building and the 2 wings on each side, which is about 2,800 square feet.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm Jake Moore. I was messing with your machine the other day. I don't know if you got it or not.
Yeah, I got it.
I think there are a lot of people in this town who really perceive that building to be not something that's attractive. I mean, I know it's family property, and I know it's old and so forth, but I hear all the time, do something about that old building. The thing's been vacant now, what, 10 years?
No, it hadn't been vacant.
Okay, when would you be planning to do something?
If I can get the okay to be able to start working on it, I've got my architect standing by right now ready to start drawing. Once I get the drawings done, and then I'd love to show, basically the beginning concept or whatever, and get y'all's feedback on it, and take a look at it, and then I could move forward with that, and then I start the process with Lexington County, which I started earlier, and we had to stop.
Who is the architect?
Bob Trussler in Charleston.
It would have to go to the planning commission once you have your, the drawings.
that would be from your architect or designer?
Well, what I'd like to do is just get the basic footprint and then give you elevations, all 4 elevations, whatever, so that you can actually see what it's going to look like on, on paper before I would start into the full-blown drawings for it, because it's going to be quite expensive once you get into that part. So I'm hoping I could get everything approved at that point and say, okay, you can go ahead with it.
All right. And we may bring you back up when we get to it. Down on the agenda if we have any questions.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for presentation by citizens?
Yes, my name is Debbie Thomas. I live at 229 Walnut Lane here in Irmo. It's a Columbia address though. I wanted to speak on behalf of the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club. I'm very concerned about the fact that you think that it's okay to, shall we say, renegotiate or ratify our agreement. This is an agreement that's been in effect for a number of years. If you should decide that you're going to do something else, I think that perhaps it's a contract between 2 people and it would have to be something that we agree with as well. I also would like to say that if we are, shall I say, invited to pay the fees that everyone is paying in order to be a part of the orchestra, what that's going to do is take money away from what we give to the town. We give scholarships, for example, to Irmo High School and Dutch Fork High School to a senior every year, and each one of those is $1,000. What you're talking about us paying would be about the value of those scholarships. We also give money to the Arbor Day Foundation, which we're proud to support. The orchestra allows us to be able to do these things. We're not asking for you to give us anything that we don't already have. We're just asking that you stand behind the contract that was signed when we turned the orchestra over to the town of Irmo. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone?
Hi, I'm Debbie Chervaville. I live at 236 Weeping Cherry Lane. It's also a Columbia mailing address, but I'm in the town of Irmo. And I'm also speaking as a member of the Women's Club. I'd like to express my dismay and my confusion regarding the town's position that it may rightfully claim a portion of the orchestra proceeds for its own purposes. It's disheartening that the Stret's importance as the signature event in our community has not been more fully realized. Certainly the LMIWC has an interest in the history and the future of the event, but we understand the economic realities the festival faces and wholeheartedly endorse efforts to bring the event into a more self-sufficient and sustainable position. With that being said, roughly 2/3 of our annual revenue is generated from the orchestra sales. The use is 100% charitable. All proceeds we raise are returned to our community. This action would be devastating to our organization. A review of the binding memorandum of agreement provides for the retention of ochre sales by the club and contains no provisions for the unilateral alteration, termination, or dissolution of the agreement. It's unclear to me how this action could be legal. I'm confused as well that the Orchestra Commission, under the auspices of the town of Irmo, would attempt to cure its financial woes at the expense of the Women's Club, a legally designated and properly registered charitable organization that for 55 years has committed to its sole purpose of serving the community. Thank you.
Somebody said that they got a letter from us.
Yeah,
Who sent a letter to them?
Was this the form letter that we sent to all the
We sent
vendors?
the form letter out, but also, the ladies obviously didn't get the whole word around to everybody, because we had a meeting with the Orchestra Commission 3 weeks ago. The mayor was there, I was there, Ivy was there, and we said we were gonna honor the contract and not charge you 20%. Then we were gonna discuss. Well,
Well, we can discuss that. I think
but
we
the
can,
people that were there.
we can discuss it when we get all the way down
Yeah.
to that. Anyone else who would like to address council? Seeing none. Next item is unfinished business. Third reading of ordinance 1503 to amend the Irmo Town Code, Article 5, Finance Division 2, Purchasing. And this is the ordinance where we added the professional services. So is there a motion for third reading?
So moved.
And a second.
Second?
I will recognize Councilman Hoops and then.
But then, I need to ask, did Jake, who was supposed to look at this?
Which the orchestra?
No, the, professional services, like who's a professional, that ordinance?
We
think.
We modified that
Yeah,
ordinance
modified
that
it.
night and gave it, I think it was, stand corrected.
It might be Brooks. I knew somebody was looking at something, and I just wondered if they did.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
And y'all basically did whatever you did with that at the last meeting, and quite frankly, I'm catching Alzheimer's, so I don't remember exactly what you did, but y'all did something last time. We basically had told you what the various options were. And y'all basically, as I recall, chose which option you wanted to go, and it was pretty much the end of that.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I made a motion to put whatever that sentence was, I can't remember what the sentence is now, back in, but that didn't get a second, so that died. And then we discussed this, and then we decided to leave it like that.
Okay.
So,
I'm sorry, Harvey, go ahead.
I was going to say, as we voted on the last meeting, that's the way I would present it.
Okay.
so any more discussion? I know Kathy's got to go somewhere, and I'm not gonna try
This
to
ordinance-
rush everybody, but.
To me, this ordinance is a waste of time. It doesn't do anything for clarity, and I urge us not to pass this because it's not clearing up anything. It's still leaving the cloud of who's the professional services and not out there. So if you want to continue having a debate every time we have a need for professional services, and let it pass it, and we'll continue to argue it.
Well, I think it leaves it open
Right.
to the town administrator to be able to conduct business of the town until it gets to a dollar amount that it has to come back to us and move forward.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, I don't either. That's why I was
Yeah.
in favor of the wording that we have here and not hamstringing us to a series of 6 words.
So any more discussion? All in favor then of third and final reading of ordinance 1503, do so show of hands. All opposed? Next item is new business, approval of a contract with the band Tokyo Joe for orchestra in the amount of $7,500. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to get it on the floor.
And a second?
Second?
Discussion. I'll recognize.
Well, I would defer to the orchestra commission. I was at the orchestra commission meeting that Bob just made reference to, and I thought that was what the commission had elected to do. And I assumed when I saw it on the agenda that a contract, and I do have a contract before me that was delivered to the town. I just think it's very plain and simple. If you read the ordinance in the town, once the commission was established, the council looks to the commission to run the orchestra, not to come running the council every time they have to make a decision. They make the decisions, they run the orchestra. It's council's job is to make sure they stay within their budget and there. So if that's what the commission wishes, is that, I see we have the chairman of the commission here, Mr. Luther, is that what the commission wants?
We do want the ban. We did vote on the ban. We didn't vote on the price, though. That was I was a little surprised that this came up, and We never had voted on the final price for what that band was. I understood they did 2 shows for $7,500, and we had voted we wanted just 1 show, and that was their main show, so I thought that would reflect a different price. I could be wrong, as I said, I've never seen the contract, so I'm kind of at a loss to make a decision on it, just because of that reason, and that my fellow commissioners haven't seen the contract either.
Okay,
So we do want the band, don't get me wrong, we do want the band, so it's a little bit of a
do you think this is something that the commission needs to go back to them and try to negotiate that price?
Well, we do meet again in 2 weeks, so.
I think,
Yeah, I had a long conversation with Greg Bigley this morning, and he's the promoter, I guess the manager for Tokyo.
He is Tokyo Joe.
And he told me the price was set like that because what they do is they do a lot of different things than what they were proposing to do last year at the orchestra. They bring in the actual drummer that played with Elton John for like 14 years. They have big screens set up out there. They have a special light show that's set up that they set up. So we're actually saving a little bit of money, but we're not paying Sid Gaddis separately for some of the light setup, because that's included in the $7,500 price. He said he wasn't going to negotiate on the price. He said that's what their price is when they come in just to do that. They were offering last year to do it for $6,000, but they were just going to do it as a follow-on show after you had them at the, the early act. They said they'd stay around for just $6,000. So it still would have cost $7,200 or something like that, because we paid them like $1,200. So, but he said this was a real big deal, the way they do it at the Kroger Center.
As I said, the commission was not aware of the price.
But I don't know what the contract is.
Well, I'm not going, if that's what you negotiated with them, then I guess that.
well, I think it was discussed at the meeting, 7,500, because I remember hearing that number.
That number wasn't brought up.
Mm-hmm.
6,000 was brought up in the meeting, actually. I don't have the minutes to show you that. I do know that that's where we were. Because that was the price we had last year, was 6,000.
It was 6 last year, I remember that.
If the commission wants to take another look at this, I'll be glad to remove my motion. But I was merely making the motion thinking that this was basically the rubber stamp of what the commission wanted. My desire is to leave it in the commission's hands and not have us trying to micromanage this thing.
Well, that's.
And I realize that's something that the commission would have looked to an administrator to do in the past, but that's for another debate.
And I think
That's a good point. It brings
and
up
that's what Bob did when he called him and negotiated with him, and that's kind of what looked like
so,
he did.
let me ask the question, is Bob the administrator of the orchestra?
I think that's what we kind of appointed him in an earlier meeting, was to handle those duties and
We appointed Bob.
So you did appoint him to be the administrator of the
We wanted him
orchestra?
to handle the finances.
Finance.
Because that's what was in the
You know,
question.
but the commission usually makes a suggestion for,
Would you have any
What
idea
those
where the
finances
contract
were?
came from? I mean, we didn't make the contract up. It came and signed by this Greg Bigley.
who's representing the band.
Greg Bigley.
He's not on our commission.
No, I said, but how did the contract, why did it come to us? We assumed it came from you guys. The commission
I
got
don't
to
know. I
you.
mean, we did vote on the band, we just didn't vote on the price. That's what I'm saying. And I've never seen the contract, and I know my other commissioners haven't seen it either, so I don't know how it came to your, I'm at a loss also. I mean,
Okay.
now, an administrator would have gone out and procured that contract from the band at that point, so I'm just, lost at how that happened.
All right, the bottom line is you tell me what you want to do with that, how I'll leave
I'll
mine.
defer to the town administrator, who has obviously discussed the contract with the band. And,
Who would have told the band to send the town a contract?
I'm not sure who did that. It wasn't me personally, so I'm
I
not
just
sure.
said, Bob said you were on the phone with the guy.
Yeah, but I didn't talk to him until this morning. This contract came in last week.
Why would he send us a contract if
We assumed it came from the commission
Yeah.
because we had talked about it a couple weeks back at the
The
commission.
commission did vote on
Okay.
the ban, we did vote on the ban, I don't deny that, we didn't vote on the price, that's the issue.
Well, there's a
That was
couple of
the issue.
things here. You didn't vote on the price, and you say this is a tribute to Elton John and Rocket Man tribute to Elton John. And nowhere in this contract does it say you're bringing a drummer from England over here to play this show. Okay, there's so many holes in this contract, it's not even funny. You talked about special lighting system, Bob. You know, we don't need to pay Sid for a PA and a lighting system if this guy has to have special lighting for his show. He can provide that. Also,
That's correct, yes.
what did we pay the band last year? Does anyone have that? No, you didn't pay them $6,000. What did we pay the band last year? $1,200. So to go from $1,200 to $7,500 for basically the same show.
No, he didn't do
Well, it's not the same show.
It is exactly the same show. This is not, this contract here is not any different than what they did last year.
Oh, yeah, it's totally different.
How is it totally different?
Okay.
Look on this contract and tell me where
I
it says
think
it's
we ought to
totally
do what
different.
the commission wants. You
The
want us-
commission's saying that
do
they
you
don't
want us to
pay.
defer it? Kurt?
Okay.
Well,
Kurt, do you want us to defer it?
Once again, I was deferring to, or whatever Bob wants to do. Bob negotiated with the guy. We didn't, so I don't.
well, they asked for,
They sent the
Tokyo
contract, I
Joe.
don't blame him for
Somehow
calling.
we got a contract, and this is the dollar amount. And he says he won't get any lower.
Well, the dollar amount is way out of line with what they need to get, and there's so
So
many
it was
holes
the
in
same,
this.
last year it was 7,200, it was 6,000 for the second and 12 for the first.
No, it was $1,200 last year.
To do their program.
We didn't do we didn't do the Elton John tribute last year.
We had Tokyo Joe last year
Correct, the open.
as an opener for our national act, okay?
And
This
you also
year,
do the Rocket Man for
the
$6,000.
$7,500, the way I understood it, is they do their own, Tokyo Joe comes out. Then they go change clothes and come out and do Elton John. And that's where, and they bring out the special drummer from Elton John.
Guys, it's not in the contract, the special drummer's not in the contract.
It doesn't specify.
It doesn't specify the special
As I
drummer.
said, I haven't
It
seen
doesn't
it.
specify anything about the PA system. These guys can provide for that price their own PA system and sound, which will save us a
If
tremendous.
council wants to defer until the next meeting of the orchestra,
Sure.
that's fine with me. I'm sure my commissioners like to see it.
I'm sure your commissioner wants to see it too. I will withdraw my,
Well, you just want to defer?
Yeah, to the next, I think that's the only
okay.
thing we
Make
can
Defer.
an amendment to defer.
And you let the commission deal with it, because I mean, I don't know what the,
There you go.
if it's still available, they don't get booked.
So there's a
Yeah, that's the other thing, make sure they don't play 60 days before.
motion to defer by Harvey, is there a second?
All that.
Second.
No, I agree.
Any discussion on
They don't
defer?
have a right.
All in favor then of deferring it to our next meeting, do so with show of hands. Next item is an approval of $7,000 to the orchestra to hire an administrator. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, this is, since we passed the ordinance last meeting, to have an administrator position available to the orchestra, I think the orchestra committee is asking for approval for $7,000 to pay an administrator, to hire an administrator. They have the funds available to them in their account. So we're just simply allowing them to spend that money, or telling them that it's okay to go ahead and hire an administrator to spend that money, since it's already been approved. So,
And
Who do they want to hire?
I don't know the name of the person, we're just giving them the authorization for funding.
so we're not going to approve the name or contract?
No, we're just giving them the funds, the money for that is all we're approving. The actual person will come from the orchestra committee, as per ordinance.
I thought we agreed to let the town handle the finances until the
This
next.
is administrator, this has nothing to do with finance.
Yeah, it does.
Which one is it now? Is the administrator or the financial person involved? You tell me.
The administrator handles the finance.
Okay, then it says in our, we have an administrative position that needs to be filled. and they were
That
one-
may be appointed. At this
And it's-
point,
and
there
you're
was
appointed.
a lot of questions about the finances, which is why the town is handling it, and it's transparent now.
Again, the whole conspiracy to destroy our festival
I have no
continues.
intent to
And-
destroy it. Can I get it?
Absolutely, and the conspiracy to destroy the festival by leaving a cloud of distrust out there that there's been some shenanigans with the money, or there's been some improprieties with the finances, which has not been founded. It hasn't been cleared up because the mayor refuses to release the preliminary report, or refuses to let us know what the.
Okay, I don't have time to argue this. I gotta leave in 5 minutes.
I understand that. Well, then, go ahead and vote for the spending money.
No, I'm voting.
Well,
So, Hardy called me, vote. I really do.
well, I mean, we all didn't get to comment. I know you seconded it, or you made it.
Well, I think that the
Whatever.
situation that you got right now with the ban is an issue that leans towards the administrator. Bob's doing an outstanding job of trying to put out little fires, but there's a forest fire burning in the background right now of things that need to be done that an administrator would be doing that needs to be done, and Bob doesn't have the time to do it. Now, they have always handled the finances, other than the actual night of the Ochre Strut, and was begged to be a part of that. But that's all water under the bridge. There's so much that needs to be done with doing things like this, making sure that they had talked back with the commission, and the commission knew that the price was different if it was, what they're going to need. Is there going to be a rider? There is no rider here. I know that Tokyo Joe doesn't have a rider. But if other bands have been discussed, there should be people talking to them. There's already issues with the women's club. They're upset. Administrator would be working through those things. But I think you're just asking too much to not have one.
Well, and I would disagree. I was at that meeting the other night, and I heard the people say they wanted Tokyo Joe, and they wanted to save money, and they didn't want to use whoever. They wanted to use somebody, and 2 or 3 of them agreed on that, and it passed. I do remember dollar amounts being spoken, but like Jake, I got Alzheimer's too, so I can't 100% remember. If it had been taped, I guess it would be good. It might be a good thing that we should do in the future. But as far as, I also remember the gentleman that spoke about the flat fee versus the item fee, and it was pretty much agreed there that they should switch to that flat fee, not the item fee.
Flat fee for what?
For the vendors.
We did.
Can I make a comment? That's
Well,
how many times that
finish.
could
Let
change?
me finish. I listened to a whole bunch of that stuff in that meeting. Now, if there's some confusion there, I don't think it's Bob's fault that there's some confusion there. I think I heard say get Tokyo Joe. Now, where that contract came from, I would assume they sent it to you and you sent it to Bob. But if there's an administrator to do that, and Bob's doing that, I think he's done what he's supposed to do. If y'all didn't approve the dollar amount, or, I don't know, I don't think you can sit here and blame all this on Bob and say.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah,
Nobody's blaming Bob. We're saying
well, he's saying Bob can't do it all, and I think
I
he's
say he
doing
doesn't
pretty
have
good.
the time to do it.
Well, I don't know.
Bob, do you have time? I think you'll do what council says, you have time.
And I think the other issue too is if we do have to hire somebody, I think it should come back to the council, not for us just to give them a blank check and to go hire somebody.
No, the ordinance says you give them a blank check, you approve it.
I don't remember seeing anything in there
Look
about
at the
giving them a
ordinance,
blank check.
it says right there that
I can
you
look at it.
authorize.
It says you may hire an administrator.
And in the past, even if it's in the budget, which it always has been, It's always been a contract. Contract came to us. We approved
Is
the
it,
contract.
are we hiring them from the council, or are they hiring them?
I have to go,
Okay.
and I have to be in Spartanburg by a certain hour, and I
Well,
cannot
let's
get
go
out.
ahead. Y'all have fun. Y'all go ahead and vote on this one for her.
I have no problem with voting on it.
All in favor of approval of $7,000 to go to the orchestra to hire an administrator, which won't be coming back to the town for us to approve, do so with show of hands. All opposed?
That doesn't make any sense.
So you gotta go?
I gotta go,
That
and
makes
I
no
vote
sense
to
at all.
ratify the Lake Murray Women's contract.
Who's the administrator of the orchestra?
Well,
The town, right,
The town's administrator.
right now, we're gonna move on to the next item. We voted on that one. This one is approval of a mutual aid agreement with North North Beach Police Department and the Irmo Police Department. Is there a motion for approval of this mutual aid?
So moved.
And a second? I'll second. Okay. Any discussion? And I'm sure this is like all the others where we just have to.
It's a standard one. I think that, don't you do something at North Mill Beach? Go down there and help them out?
Yes, for bike week. It's the same thing we have with Camden, they will reimburse the town for our expenses.
Now look, man, I got a question about this, because you get these approvals all over the place. You got one for Camden, you got one for Myrtle Beach now. When do they have the one for Las Vegas? When do they have them? I want to go to that one, okay?
If Las Vegas Metro sends us one, I'll let you know.
I mean, but really, what do we do? Do we get anything out of this?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Do we get any money out of this? Do we get any?
The city of North Myrtle Beach will reimburse the town of Irmo for what we spend for this.
Salary, equipment.
So they get overtime hours.
Yes, the
Police
officers are paid by us, then the town of Myrtle Beach reimburses the town of Irmo for what we've spent for this.
And the same thing would happen if we needed people here for the orchestra or whatever else or something else.
If we wanted to make that agreement, yes. Right now, the agreement we have with the city of Lexington is they send people over to us at no cost to the town of Irmo.
And if we don't do this mutual aid agreement with Myrtle Beach, I mean we can't go down there and become police with them, or?
I know I didn't.
Well, it means our police officers
Didn't hear that right.
For the parade on Saturday morning, not for the deputies that work the event, but the parade Saturday morning.
Oh,
We
okay.
work in exchange with them, we go and help them with their race for hunger, and they come and help with the parade on Saturday morning.
Okay, so the money that we paid, the cash money that we paid to Lexington County,
The deputies
approximately
is completely
$7,500 was for only the deputies at the orchestra festival, nothing.
Friday night
for
and
the
Saturday,
parade.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the Lexington city officers, we have 4 of them come over and they volunteer for that because they're reciprocating for us and officers over to the Race for Hunger. The deputies are here because we couldn't do it without them, and the orchestra pays them.
Okay, and do we have anyone from Richland County?
For the orchestra?
Yes,
sir.
Okay, thank you.
And to kind of answer your question about Las Vegas, if I understand, if I remember reading, the state passed a law years ago that allows municipalities to go into other municipalities and still have jurisdiction if they have a mutual aid. But it's not for outside of the state, so it would only be inside of the state.
Correct.
So any more discussion? All in favor then of the approval for the mutual aid agreement for North Myrtle Beach, do so with show of hands. All opposed? And next item is the approval of the Irmo Women's Club contract. Kathy has this to be on the agenda. She's not here. But is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Sir.
And before we get started, we do this. We can discuss it all here. This is a contract. We go into executive session. If anybody wants to, they just have to ask. If we want to, we'll vote on it, or we do it here. So just put that out there in case anybody wants to. So, any discussion? Paul?
I believe the women's club should operate just as they always have.
continue making that great fight over, and no charge whatsoever. Let them continue. We love them.
Any more discussion?
Well, I would concur. They performed very well over the many years. I know that the contract does not state it clearly, but I know for a fact that the past administrators, and I'm going to use that as a plural because there was more than one, had asked the Women's Club on several different occasions to expand because it was needed to make the festival and help the festival grow. Some of it, they had to incur additional expenses to buy more fryers and that type thing, and in order to meet the request of the Open Strut Commission, and they did that, and I think that we need to ratify this, do whatever we need to support the Women's Club and their support of the festival.
It's kind of odd that you would vote for that way, Paul, because you say you think the Women's Club need to operate like they've always been operating in the past, but then yet still you vote against hiring an administrator to run the orchestra. And I don't understand the logic in that, but anyway, that's your decision to make as a councilman. At the same time, the conspiracy to destroy the festival continues on by this cloud of uncertainty that's been cast by the mayor over the entire festival itself. That there's been money missing, there's been appropriations, there's not had worked, it continues to be out there, looming out there. It's making it very difficult for us to hire, to get new sponsors to come on board because they don't know what kind of festival we got going on. At the same time, these women have worked hard over the last several years to do what they do to build us a festival, and then you turn around and say, okay, once you're not to do anything and ratify the contract, you have to ratify something that doesn't need to be ratified. The contract has never been voided out from the get-go. If that's the case, if you have to ratify this contract every so often, we need to go back to the franchise agreements we got with SC&G and AT&T and Mid-Carolina and re-ratify all those franchise agreements that was voted on by a council 20 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever it was, when Irmo was first founded. And that's what I don't understand is why we have to even have this conversation and have something ratified again. The City of Columbia, your dad sold the City of Columbia a water system, and they turned around and hit us over the head with this. Do we need to go and void that contract out that your dad sold the City of Columbia for the water system? You know, I mean, come on, man. I don't understand why we even have this conversation. So my point is this. You're talking about it needs to be ratified. It doesn't need to be ratified. You don't need to do anything. You have an existing contract that's in place, it's in force, and you're simply honoring what the people have done for the last 30-something years.
And I'm gonna just ask Jake, didn't you send us an email maybe a month ago that said it really isn't a valid, basically, terminology to some degree?
If I did, I don't recall that. My belief is, here is what I think. There is a legitimate question as to which contracts may be for more than the period of time that you guys make up the mayor and council. There are certain contracts that you cannot bind a future council. On the other hand, when you basically are talking about property rights and property contracts, you can certainly bind future councils. What basically happened is that the Women's Club owned the orchestra. It was theirs. And they sold it to us in a contract where, in exchange for us taking it over, we agreed to basically give them, in effect, a contract for, I think it was 35 years or something like that, whatever that contract actually says. You know, I think I've been asked all along, you know, what's the legal import of that? Are we bound by that? If I had to guess, I would say, yes, we are. But you know, if you want to make things absolutely jam up and jelly tight where there's no question at all, just ratify the thing and move on. I think that these people certainly are, you know, they're a wonderful organization. I happen to know a lot of them personally, plus that they have made donations to the Arbor Day Commission, which we certainly always appreciated, and they've been very supportive of beautification and the library and all sorts of things. You know, you're talking about, I think, a grand total of $300 or $400 a year. The great scheme of the orchestra, it's a very small amount of money, but to these ladies, it's a lot.
Well,
so my belief is you either ignore it and just go on down the road like you've always gone, not charging them, but the issue's been raised, so I'd recommend you just ratify the agreement and move on. But I mean, that's a political decision whether you're going to ratify that agreement or try to avoid the agreement. I would certainly hate to, I would hate to be in a situation where we were having unpleasantness with the Women's Club. That
You're
would not
saying
be-
ratify the agreement or void the agreement?
I think you could, look, you're in a situation where the issue's been raised. The town of Irmo has sent them a letter, basically saying
That's
you
what
owe
I'm saying. I don't know where this letter came from. I don't remember any letter.
I don't either, Barry, but the letter came, all right? So the issue's been raised. They're here. They need to know something. My recommendation would be, I don't care how you do it, either ratify the agreement or tell them that the agreement stands, or that y'all are going to honor the agreement, or you're going to dishonor the agreement. They need to be told something so they know what to do. I mean, the issue's been raised by the fact that a letter got sent. And I didn't send the letter, you didn't send the letter got sent.
Well, I need to know what letter got sent.
Well, I told you.
It was a letter from the application form that we send out at the
Yeah.
beginning of the year. I sent
And
the letter.
everyone spoke, let me speak and address some stuff here too, and then we can vote.
I talked to the Attorney General about this, so just so you want to know what
Yeah.
he said.
This is a whatever, of understanding and agreement, which is something just like the thing here, that every time council changes, every time the sheriff changes, every time, whatever, we have to redo those things. And I think some of them, I think you mentioned before, they just do it every so often, periodically. I think Camden's didn't have anybody new, we didn't have anybody new, they just every so often do it. I don't know why, but yeah, it's an agreement. And agreements are just like contracts, and you're a lawyer, and they break them all the time, and everything else. The question is, yeah, do we want to continue doing it? I think the letter, when we changed from the, whatever it was, ticket system to the new system, a letter went out to all the vendors saying, hey, here's how we're going to do it, which was, I'm guessing, that per item charge thing.
Well, it was the per item thing, but we had sent one to the Women's Club and also the beer sales and the amusements because
Okay.
there's no tickets and we were just going to give 20% from all of them.
20% for them.
So the last orchestra commission meeting, and then we said we weren't going to take 20% from them.
Okay.
We were just going to try to get them for a booth rental because that's not in the agreement.
Right. And I think that's one of the questions I have too, is if I were to read this and say, okay, we're going to stick to it, there's nowhere in here that says they get 4 free booths a year. I don't know where that came from. I think over time, like you mentioned, we needed them to have more presence. And somebody asked them, whether it was the town, or the orchestra administrator, or the orchestra chairman, or who, but somebody asked them to get more booths and, you know, fill up more booths. That might have been when we were at the parking lot, or somewhere over there. I can't
No, I can tell you exactly what it was. It was on Lake Murray Boulevard.
Yeah,
And we wanted to have more okra, fried okra on the other end up closer
Yeah.
to CVS. We went to them, asked them about it. They said, well, we'll have to go buy more fryers. Okay, well, can you do it? Yeah, we'll get it done. And they did. And we had fried okra on both ends because many of us on council and other people heard complaints from the citizens is, you know, I'm 70 years old. I can't walk all the way down there and get okra. Why can't you have it up here? And so they did. They didn't complain about it. And for the next year, they had multiples. Once they had bought the tents and the cookers, I wasn't going to be the one to say, y'all got to throw that away. Now, when you open your booth, it's just a bigger booth. You cook more okra. And how many times did you sell out? Several.
So now we're at the point of we changed everything to a flat fee, if I'm understanding, which I don't know exactly what that flat fee is, but there's a flat fee. If you sell under so many items or something, you get.
And it wouldn't pertain to them because of their revenue agreement in this.
If they do the 20%, you're saying?
No, we had said we weren't going to do the 20% at the
Okay.
last commission meeting.
So they're not paying the 20%.
Correct.
Is there still an issue that they're paying a booth?
They've never paid for food.
Okay, but I mean, according to the new plan, whatever, are they supposed to pay one on that?
Well, that's what we need to get decided because
So that's what we
everybody
gotta
else pays.
decide is, do they pay a booth fee? Do they get one free booth, two free booths, three free, four, whatever? Is there a limit as to how many booths they get in electricity?
Whatever.
And then that's what we gotta decide.
I say no fee, as many booths as they want.
No administrator.
We're talking about Lake Murray Women's Club.
And that's fine.
Yeah, I know.
Love them.
I just, at the same time, I think we need to make sure, because, and again, Jake might, but every so many years when we have new council members, they can change it because it's not a binding, really, contract. They could. I don't know, but I think what we do is every 2 years, we figure out what we're gonna do for the next 2 years and then ratify it every 2 years. Just like we do these memorandums of whatever. And then they're good to go.
There's certainly nothing wrong with ratifying the agreement and passing a resolution saying that you're not gonna charge them a booth fee.
Yeah, or the understanding with this one is, right now, they can get as many, whatever, free booths or whatever you call it.
Well, no, that's not what this contract says.
Yeah, this one doesn't, but we're all kind of making that suggestion that they should, so is that what we're agreeing to?
Well, it goes again back to the Orchestra Commission, and, you know, we need to get out of their business and let them run the orchestra.
I agree too, but when
But
council members show up at the Orchestra Commission meeting and kind of influence them into other things, I think if we're gonna get out of the business, we should get out of it altogether, all of it.
Well,
And let them run, instead of us interfering with them.
You're the only one micromanaging everybody.
No, you're the one showing up and wanting all this stuff done.
I'm not showing up, you don't want to show up.
I've been at those meetings multiple times where we got these large
We can run
meetings
50
and
meetings, right?
everybody else meetings. So I agree, if we're not gonna micromanage, we shouldn't. But if we are, then we should. That's another issue, but that's really the issue. So, we're in agreement that they can get as many booths as they want.
well, no, I think what
You leave it alone, man.
you need to quit trying to put spin on it.
Exactly.
It's written in black and white, read it as black and white.
Well,
It
if I
doesn't,
read it, it doesn't say free electricity or free booths. It just
right,
says
but it
choice.
doesn't say that they have to pay for it either.
No, but that application does. That's the problem. The application says whatever. You
And
have to do a separate one.
the town code says the Orchestra Commission has the right to make those decisions as to how the orchestra is run.
If you had an administrator.
Well, they can do that without an administrator. If they can make that decision, they can make that decision.
The contract does not state that they have one space. It says they have the choice of space. And in the past, the Orchestra Commission and the administrator has worked with them to give them as much space as they felt like they need to do an adequate job. Last year, it was 58 feet. I know that because I measured it off. And I met with some of them, with the administrator out there, and they kind of pointed to where they wanted to be. They wanted to be when the people first came in, the first thing they saw. Who was the first booth? Women's Club. They got what they asked for, and they did an outstanding job.
It tasted great.
Did they have one booth last year or two?
They had 58 feet. It wasn't marked as one booth or two booths or five booths.
4 according to Bob's, I don't know.
4
But
separate locations? I don't remember that.
at one,
They had a
before,
real big look.
before we went to the park, a booth was equal to 14 feet. There's, out of 25 booth areas over there, there's probably not but 3 of them that's 14 feet. Most of them are in the 25, 28 feet. We did that because once we got on our property, we could allow early setup, and it was easier to get some of these big trailers in and out by having to work around trees. If you remember now, we do have trees. And it was easier to do that. And so we made spaces, not 14-foot spaces, but we made adequate spaces based on what a vendor might need. And that's what Bob is trying to do, as hard as he can, is to deal with the vendors. And they say, I want to come. Well, what are you going to bring? Well, I got a trailer. Well, how big is it? How long is the tongue? I'm sorry, I don't have a space that big. Or yes, I have 2 spaces. I can put you in the same place you were last year. Not that it's just 14 feet, but that it is a space, and it may be space number whatever.
So,
Now, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
okay.
The reason this whole contract issue is up in the air is because I have talked to the Attorney General and also the Municipal Association attorneys. This is after talking to Mr. Moore. It's the wording. It's because it's a memorandum of understanding. Now, if this council wants to make it permanent, take care of the Women's Club, we need to do an ordinance and put it in our town code that you guys can get whatever.
But doesn't
That's what we need to do to get this fixed, or change the wording on this.
No. This is by ordinance now.
Yes, it's by ordinance. We haven't got an ordinance.
It is not in our ordinance. It's a memorandum of understanding, and that's what the whole issue is about, because you are supposed to change these every time the people, the decision makers sign this. Every time it changes, you gotta get it reviewed. And we haven't done it before.
We've never had that done before.
We never
Yeah,
have.
we haven't done it
We
right.
should have. is
We
what
should
I'm
have.
saying. And we never done the ordinance either.
And there's nothing wrong with doing an ordinance and saying the Women's Club, Lake Murray Women's Club will get, and then just spell it out, and then you never have this issue again. And it protects them in the future.
Yes, there is something wrong there. You're implying that it says right here that this is approved by ordinance passed by the town, number 7 in this contract.
Yeah, but we never.
It is understood and agreed that this memorandum of understanding in agreement must be approved by ordinance passed by the town of Irmo.
And I'm trying to tell you that that was not done.
You say there's never been an ordinance passed.
Not specifically to protect the Women's Club and give them these same, what they have here.
Well, I'm not in favor of us.
I'm just giving you advice on
So
how
that
to
2
do
cents,
things.
if we pass an ordinance can be changed too. So
That's right.
That's
It's
kind
in
of,
the town code.
yeah, but at least it's, yeah.
Well, I'm not in favor of backtracking on something that's been in place for 30-something years, because Mr. King decides he wants to throw this cloud of ambiguity out there.
Well, you can simply ratify it, but that doesn't mean this won't come up again down the road.
Yeah.
You don't need to ratify it. There's nothing to be ratified. It's already in place. You need to ratify something that's already in place, it's already in order.
So we have a motion to approve the contract. We can vote on that, or we can vote to ratify, I don't know what the difference is. Or we can agree with Barry and say we don't need to ratify it, we don't do anything.
You don't need to do anything.
Avoid it or defer it.
So the question, if we ratify it, we would still need down the road.
This council should sign something with the Women's Club.
Okay.
So it would have to be.
I'm gonna make a motion right after we
Just a new
make
one.
a vote on this.
And then we do an ordinance to clarify it.
I'm just saying an ordinance is the best way to do it, that's
Sound
all.
like, yeah. So, we ready to vote? Is it? All in favor then of the approval for the Irmo Club contract ratification, whatever we're gonna call this thing, memorandum of understanding, just so show of hands. All opposed? Two. So you vote no?
Yes, sir.
Well, then that'll, this will fail for lack of, whatever you call it, lack of majority. It's not here.
It's not here.
It doesn't. But now, I'm gonna give you the floor before we go to the next item.
Okay, I'm gonna, ask council to direct the town administrator to draft an ordinance, next in number, that will spell out the conditions within this memorandum of agreement, to have on our next agenda, the first reading. And I think you know what the components need to be. Put it on the agenda.
We'll write it up and then send it to Harvey to make sure, and then send it to Jake and make sure, and then send it back.
I mean, we want them not to pay no revenue and not to be charged for any space.
Right.
All right, next item is the discussion of the property located at 1250 Lake Murray Boulevard, the Beulah Building. I've asked this to be on the agenda. One, because I know we've had, over the years, different things come up about it, and we had some emails not too long ago, I think, is what kind of brought it up again. I think I heard Jay send an email out, something in that email about it not meeting zoning. And I know Bobby mentioned that before because of the parking. And I've spoken to Mr. Dula about it, and I know that it went through the, what do you call it, probate. We didn't do anything to it until that was resolved, and that was resolved, was it last year sometime, Ron? Was that probate resolved last year or early this year?
Last February.
Last year. So it's resolved, now we're going to do something to his building. And I don't know, I'll have to ask him again, but I think he had mentioned at one point, and things may have changed, but he had two properties. One is a home, and one is a property over here back behind New Friars Gate.
It's off in New Friars Gate. It's not in town.
Yeah,
It's surrounded by
back
town.
in there, which backs up to your family property, somewhere back up in there. That he's got them both on this for sale. Whichever one sells, and we take that money. Now, that may have changed. But whether he's got the money now or 6 months from now, whenever he gets it and gets to working on it, there's some discussion about parking issues. Whether there's enough parking there. I think we had looked at it before, the plan, and I can't remember the numbers that y'all mentioned, but let's say it needs 9 and you have 7 or something. It was close, but it was a little bit short maybe. Or, and Ron can correct me on that too, if he tears down those buildings behind there, he'll have enough parking there, but the big two buildings that are rented now still don't have enough parking. We kind of grandfather those in and let those people kind of work.
Yeah, they haven't sat empty as long.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues is if he gets ready to do something to the building, is he going to be able to rent it out because he doesn't have parking or it doesn't meet our code, parking code. He can ask for a variance, may get it, may not. I know some of the problems, at one time it probably had enough parking, and then DOT came in, widened the road, and
Absolutely, it did.
took away a lot of his property, which is not something he created. It's also possible, and I don't know, but he had brought up this and asked me about the grandfather. And I told him, I said, well, I think that is on a property unless it's vacant, which 2 of those buildings haven't been vacant. I don't know if that covers the whole property or just the corner. But there are some issues in there about will he need more parking? Will he have the parking? Will it be grandfathered in? And all that to say, either, in my mind, we've got a couple of choices. I know there's been some talk about condemning the property. Lexington County, yeah, went out there and looked at it and said it's not condemnable. It's, the roof is good, foundation good, and all that good stuff, they can't condemn it. We could still try to condemn it, but we're still going to pay whatever, in my mind, not just that corner, but the whole property's worth.
Fair market value.
For the whole thing, because I think it's all one property. And let's just say that the whole thing is $1 million, whatever. And we condemn it, we give them $1 million, we got this corner. Now, we want to do something with it. We can tear down the corner but we're gonna be renting, because we're a landlord now for those two steel buildings, and technically, they don't have enough parking. We're renting out to somebody, and at some point, we're gonna have to either give them a variance or change their parking ordinance for that property, or the same thing, extend some kind of grandfather clause that allows them to do it. I would much rather work that out, give him that deal, than work it out later after we condemn the property and give the town that deal. I would also think if somebody took property from me, even if they paid me, and then turned around and put something else on there and changed their parking ordinance to benefit them, I think I'd want to sue them for the property back. So those are some of the issues where we're at, and I think he just wants to fix his property and wants to know can.
Here's the following, here's the issue that you've got. Obviously, the Dula family has been a part of the history of Irmo for a long time. And nobody wants to be overly aggressive with those folks. I basically knew Mr. Dula's daddy and did business with his daddy, and I think they're fine folks. Town of Irmo has been incredibly patient with this building for, I guess, as long as I can remember. It has been vacant and an eyesore for a long, long, long time. We understood the probate thing was going on. We understand that there's been some changes in the family and so forth. The question becomes, to what extent are you willing to remain patient? The building will never be able to be used in compliance with our zoning ordinance unless Mr. Dula acquires more property.
Now you're talking about the parking
zone. Or knocks down a portion of one or both of the metal buildings. It would seem like an incredible waste to knock down the metal buildings to rehab the old building. Obviously, Mr. Dula has some serious personal affinity and sentimental value in regard to the old building. It was his daddy's store, and he probably was raised there. And believe me, somebody who understands family property, I can understand that. You guys have got a decision from a policy standpoint what you want to make. Mr. Dula, in my humble opinion, it would be not a wise investment to try to rehab that building. It's just going to cost a fortune to do it. You're still going to have an old building that's been rehabbed, and you're going to have to knock down a perfectly good building to do that. That doesn't make wise business sense. Now, obviously, if the town council wants to just sit here and wait for him to decide to do something, if he ever does, or if he ever gets the money, or when he gets around to it, you know, that's a policy decision that I cannot make for you. It's not my job to make it for you. It's a decision you got to make. I believe that there's a good argument that can be made that building is unsightly, unsanitary. I think there's a good argument that can be made that it probably violates your present fire ordinances. Of course, I think the chief is here, or somebody from the fire department is here. I think it probably violates the fire ordinances. I know that it's unsightly, and if you ask anybody in town from an appearance standpoint, what's the biggest rub, you always have the same question: why is that building allowed to stay there? Again, the town of Irmo has always attempted to be incredibly compassionate and work with business people, so you don't want to be unduly harsh with Mr. Dula. I tried to call him to have a conversation, didn't return my telephone call. But, look, I haven't returned some people's telephone.
All you wanted to do is offer to tear it down, and I just didn't want to listen to you, Jake.
That's okay. I asked you to call me. That's all right. You didn't have to call me back.
I didn't have anything to say to you at that.
All right. Well, my recommendation would be this. If you want to do something with it, I think the thing probably violates your nuisance ordinance. If you want to get aggressive with it.
And I think, Bob, look at it, it doesn't. We don't have an ordinance against ugly, and really, I mean, we can all sit here, I refinish furniture, I like old buildings, I like that building better than the metal.
Your options,
But then again, I mean, that's everybody's opinion. but we
your
don't
options
have
are,
that.
your options are to do nothing or to try to do something.
Well, our options are, and I think if he wants to do something, he needs to know from us, can he do what he wants to do? And I don't know what, I think you mentioned 2,800 square foot. I don't know if you know offhand, Kim, or can click to that real quick and Google it, bunch it, whatever. How much parking spaces are needed for 28 square foot?
It depends what type of business it is.
Well, let's just say it's commercial, because I know.
I mean, it's a
Well, it
retail
depends
business.
on
No,
the
They're
type.
all
like an
commercial.
office, like a commercial office, like a, say, a lawyer office.
Retail or office?
Just office.
Because office doesn't require as many parking
Yeah.
spaces.
Probably one for 350.
And let's just say he's short.
He's
We
going to
have-
be short, he is short, Artie, he's
And
coming out,
if
look
we-
at, he's short.
if we-
He's short now, even with what they have.
I've got 10 parking places drawn out on the drawings right here. I
Yeah,
think it's 10.
how many is needed for that little 2,800 square foot thing?
Just the front part?
Yeah, just the
I mean,
28.
they're already with what they've got now. When they came in with
Well-
the metal building,
Yeah, the metal building's always gonna have a problem, it already does, but let's just say that building, 2,800 needs 12 or 10 or 15 or.
Well,
How many parking spaces do you need for that, for the present size?
Well, I wanna do the 2,800 first, because I kinda wanna know what is needed for that remodel.
One for 300 square feet or something.
So that would be 800.
Well, the plan that Mr. Dooley had, shown me a few years back, I think he was gonna take one of the metal buildings down, and that was gonna become parking.
No, I was
leave one
gonna
metal.
tear
Just
about 4,500 square foot of the old, all the wood stuff that was added on over years.
Right.
All that's
Everything
gonna
on
be
the back of
torn
it.
down, and the parking lot, and the retention pond was put in, and then I went to all south, so that I would not have people coming in and out at the stoplight. I went to all south State Bank, and they gave me a variance to come on their property and drive around so people could exit out on Woodrow Street. And they also gave me a variance for the retention pond.
So based on the three, whatever, one for 300, he needs 8 for 2,800 square foot if it's an office, not a retail. He has 10, say, on that thing there that you're looking at. And let's just suppose those 10 are good. He's got 8, but he still has the issue of the two metal buildings needing something that isn't there. They're just not enough. Which we grandfathered that in. And I guess the issue would be, would we, and I don't know if those 10 are going to steal some away from the other building.
Do a significant
We
amount.
might have 2 left over that you can get to the other building. But that's the issue, there's a parking issue.
If you do a significant modification to the property, then the grandfathering goes away. He doesn't have adequate parking, no matter how you look at it. Am I
Well,
right, Kim?
That's true, and that's the issue.
well,
We can either do one or two things. We can either make a variance, work with him, give him something that he works with, or we can condemn the property and buy it, and then we're stuck with it.
You can't,
So,
you can't.
yeah, we
make a
can't
variance,
condemn it,
Artie.
so, that's right.
The
So,
ZBA
we have a
makes
choice
the
of
variance.
either
You'll be
working
talking
with
to
the guy
George.
or harassing him, and like Rick Quinn says, somebody gives up, walks out and says, hey, I'm gonna just let it be done. I think it's in our ballpark to either make some kind of decision and say, let's figure out what we can do. And I think that's what he wants to know, because he don't want to spend the money, I wouldn't either, and then not be able to rent it out.
The town council doesn't have the authority to grant a variance.
No, but we can assist in getting that thing in there and seeing, and if it's not, we can change our ordinance. We changed our ordinance for the hotel down there. We can change our ordinance to say, hey, we're gonna change it to whatever, 1 per 600, and make it half as much. I know when we looked at that not the hospital, but the hotel, we came to find out that our ordinance was over. Everybody else was requiring 1.5 or 1.7 or whatever it was, and we were requiring another number. So we were out of date. We may be out of date, I don't know. But I think he wants a feel from us as to, are we gonna work? Are we gonna say no? So if it's a no, then what's it say? He can't fix the building, and then we're just gonna complain about it forever until it falls down. Or we can say, yes, let's work with them and get some plans and figure out what to do. We may still have to wait 6 months for them to sell something and get the money. We may, I don't know. But then again, that house over on Witchwood, somebody bought it, it's gonna take them 6 months to.
Mr. Mayor, you put this on the agenda, who's complaining about this man's property?
Well, I saw a bunch of emails, a couple of weeks ago, in regards to this, and I think we had an email from some lady out there, that side of town,
We've got a few people that
4 or 5 months ago.
about the eyesore, just a question.
Yeah, and so I felt like, let's get him in here, hear what he wants to do with the property, hear what he wants to tell us, how long it's gonna take, and then find out, we're gonna be, because he's still gonna have a parking issue regardless. Whether it's on that portion or the big portion, somewhere in there, there's gonna be parking. If he only needs 8 and he's got 10, then that little building don't have a problem. But the other part's still grandfathered in, but at some point, someday, there's gonna be an issue there.
I think that you've got a couple of issues that you gotta look at. One, you're gonna have to look at a plot plan so that he knows how close he can be to the road and to the sidewalk with his parking spaces. He can't come all the way out to the curb, and I think he needs to know that so that he can have those elevations drawn.
I've already got the drawings for the engineered drawings for the parking lot have been done by an engineering company here in Irmo. And they were completed 3 years ago.
And that's for the top half, or the whole place?
No, that was just for the building up front and all I was tearing down, and then I had all that designed by the engineering company.
Okay.
And I have it right here, but Bob has a copy still in his office.
Right, that's what I'm saying, that showed that metal
Yeah.
building being taken
Yeah.
out and all becoming a parking lot.
And you say it takes a little bit of out?
He's gonna take one of them out, the one that's closer to all south. Is that correct?
No. I went to all south because I didn't want people to come in and out at the stoplight and cause a problem, a traffic problem. So I went to all south and asked them, would they allow me to egress on their property to bring a driveway, say when you leave the building, you can drive out around the corner of my building, but I'll actually be going on top of their land, but they'll allow me to put the driveway on their land to exit out on Woodrow Street, and then they can go either right or left to the light.
That won't be approved by the planning commission.
Yeah, and that was one thing I remember,
It hasn't gone before the planning commission.
yeah, and I think Lexington, if an and it might be an easement, I'm not sure, but if the adjoining property gives an easement, then they will allow that into the thing. And that may be something we need to look at as far as an ordinance change. That may work, I don't know. We may
Well,
need to
I
look
was
at
doing
that.
everything I could to not cause any issues.
But is it the will of the council or the feeling of the council? I know, Paul, you get ready to say something, but how do we want to handle this? Work with them or not, or what, or?
How many parking spaces does he need?
Well, according to Kim, if he remodels to 2,800 and it's office space, not retail space, he needs 8.
And
he has 10. According to that, whatever he's got there. So he would be fine. But it may be that the 8 or the 10 is kind of stealing one from the 2 big buildings, which maybe don't have enough already. Maybe they need 15 and they only got 6. And so we'd have to look at all that. If we changed our ordinance, to allow the ingress, egress, or to allow parking on adjoining property, like they do in Lexington or something. I think it's in Lexington, but somebody was talking to me said they do it. They allow that. We just have to change the ordinance. That may fix it, that may not. I don't know, until you might want to talk to some of the other municipalities, Lexington, West Columbia, Casey, and see. It's one of the mayors at one of the places that I was talking to that said they do that. That might resolve it, I don't know. But we kind of need to let them know something so that I mean, you say you're ready to start whenever,
Well,
but is
would
it based on the money or just
I
ready
mean,
to
would it
start?
help if I got my architect to draw the footprint of the building and then do the elevations so y'all could actually see what it's gonna look like when it's completed? Would
I don't
that
think
be
it's a
helpful?
problem the way the building looks. I'm saying we think the problem is the number of actual usage.
Yeah.
Parking spaces for your use.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, this is an ancient Hermes building, built back in the 20s or whatever, as part of the history of this town. There's certain things that we can allow that you won't allow for, let's say, Blockbuster over here that was built way after that, you know.
Yeah.
This building is part of the history of this town. Yeah, it doesn't quite meet the new classification code for parking. You know, we can certainly approve or give you a grandfather in or approve special circumstances for things like that. I mean, that's the right thing to do. But if you want to go through all this rigmarole and put the man through all this aggravation and then tell him no, y'all go and do that. I don't think we need to do that.
I think, Bob, too, maybe you need to call some of these other municipalities and ask them what their parking is for office and commercial, or office and retail, and kind of get an idea of where.
I think we're in line, but yeah, I mean, it's just.
And just see how, and then check on that other thing. And then we can better decide what we gotta do, how much we're off, and we can kind of get a feel maybe if the variance is delayed.
Was that a grocery store one time?
I'm not sure what it was. From what I understand, it was built to supply people in the area when all the workers came in to do the dam.
Yeah.
So I think it might have been like a general mercantile type
Right,
store.
a general store type.
My father came in and bought it in '46, and that's when he started the furniture store in the little main building. That was all it was, and then as the business got a little better, he built one wing on one side, then he built the other, and then he started building in the back, and then in the early '60s is when he built the two metal buildings.
I do have some personal experience on your father. I know Mr. Mack in the back probably frequented that store too. I don't know if he did what we did, but it was the best toy. He let us use the refrigerator boxes to play in.
Let them, the refrigerators to play in?
Well, no, the boxes.
Okay.
And I asked Mr. Bill, I says, go and knock on the door, I says, can I have a box? He says, son, you can have as many boxes as you want. We drive them all home. But I'm glad to know that you got something in the works to do something with the building.
Well, I tell you, I learned a lot of things from him when I was real young working with him. I learned a little bit about business, but the main thing I learned about was his generosity. I remember going, collecting money from people. We collect $1, $2, we write out a receipt. And these people were very poor, but he, whatever they could afford to pay, that's what they paid. And then Thanksgiving or Christmas time, he loaded up the truck with hams and turkeys, and he'd have me run it up and give it to him.
Cool. Any more questions, discussions, or? And, it might be good to get that elevation plan that you're talking about.
I'll be willing to do that.
Let us look at it, and we can kind of get a better idea
Of what it's going to
where
look
we
like.
stand technically. Okay. Next item is a discussion of the contract with advanced disposal. We had put this on for discussion a couple weeks ago. We met with Hardy, what's his name?
Hardy Horn and
Horn?
Doug over there.
Oh, okay,
He's right
yeah.
there.
And if y'all want to come up, of course, I guess we got less complaints.
They went down this
Wednesday,
week.
Thursday, or whatever. But anyway, they explained a whole lot of stuff that they were doing, and so we wanted him to come and tell it to all of us, council and Elmer and everybody else too.
Okay, I'm Doug Delton. I'm the new general manager for Advanced Disposal, and I've heard that you've had some service issues in your town, kind of up and down. I guess from our conversation with Mayor King and with Hardy Horn, it's been more good than bad, but we've had some bad spikes. And this last little spike we've had was really just being ill prepared for the yard waste spike that happens every year. But we have addressed it. We've addressed that. We brought another truck in. I brought a few more drivers in. But the biggest thing is we did a little change in management, and expectations were not in line with where Advanced Disposal's expectations are. So, and they are now. And now I'm actually here permanently now. I'll move my family down April 20th, so we'll be here.
That's a good day. Birthday.
That's your birthday? Well, there you go. I'll be your birthday present. But, so I'm quite confident that you guys will get back to what you used to, and we'll get back here quickly. And I got my business cards, if I can give one to all of y'all, if you have any issues with any in your area.
And you had mentioned that on the yard trash that you had, I think, 6 trucks, and you used to have 7, and you put the other one back in, or the...
Well, what it was, and forgive me for the number,
fall,
because, again, I've been there 8 weeks, I don't remember the total number we was talking, but there was a route they used to run, and they pulled that route out. So whatever that number was, it was 1 shy. We added that back in, and we added a claw truck. And it's a big truck. It has a boom that comes out, and the big piles can be knocked down so much quicker than by hand.
And they can call in when they come to a place with a big pile, and they can say, hey, come get that, and they keep on doing what they're doing and moving down, getting the
right. And we have
and the small stuff.
We have a supervisor that's in the area, and that's why he's there to kind of spot those piles too, and then they communicate with the trucks. So that all went really smooth last week. And that was the first week that we had that big truck over here, other than just the spot things we did. But again, I'm quite confident you guys will get what you're wanting, and we'll have some good conversations.
A question on your yard trash. You said you got the claw. So is it still that limit, that 6 by 6 and 6?
Well, it is whatever's in the thing. It's 4 by 4, I think is what it's in there. But
we don't have it. I said there is no 4 by 4.
The law.
There's a 4-inch and a 4 foot, but there's no 4 by 4 by 4.
That's correct. It's not supposed to be a 4 by 4 pallet.
okay, 4 by the
So
4 inch.
4 inches,
4 inches in
They don't pick up
diameter.
anything.
And then the
Correct.
pallet would be-
And the big thing that we've stressed, and I've stressed since I've been with them, yeah, we have to have a contract, and we all have to agree on certain terms. But mainly, we just want to be, help you guys keep your community clean, and our guys got there, and y'all putting stuff out, we're going to haul it off. Is what it's going to come down to. As long as if something's ridiculous all the time, then we'll come and we'll talk about it, and we'll figure out what to do with that. But it's not complicated, and we're going to uncomplicate it. So.
But the last report, they're still missing, it's a lot of missing garbage.
It's not going to be, it's going to take a couple of weeks, I would think, to get all of it.
Yeah, and it's a trickle effect, and again, it goes back to what I was talking about. It's just kind of the expectations. It wasn't, a lot of things wasn't being asked of. The route sheets wasn't being tracked. The not outs wasn't being marked. Those are different things it's just common stuff that we should be doing wasn't being performed. And unfortunately, the site manager, I had to let him go about 2 weeks ago just because of some of these issues. And that he was a big part of that. But it was fixed.
Coatsworth?
Pardon me?
Can you emphasize Coatsworth for, it's a subdivision?
Oh, see, now I apologize for that, because like I said, I don't know this area real well yet.
You're going to serve everybody, I hope.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's no matter where they're at, it's going to be a part of it.
And we're going to, or went and met with Elmer, too, you said, and spoke with him?
Yeah, we met with Elmer, and we went over a few things, had a good conversation with Elmer. And he actually witnessed the big claw truck prior week, I believe, up there cleaning up the neighbors. And they had an area, and it was extreme, but it would need to be done. And it was, what was it, Elmer? 80 foot long and 4 foot wide brush.
The length of the whole frontage of the property.
Yeah.
About 5 foot high.
Yeah, and that truck, it eats it up pretty quick. So it'll be a big. And that truck's set every day. We didn't utilize it. Every day it's set. I got a full-time driver in that truck every day now. So that'll all tie together very well. And I noticed
the garbage pickup has been coming later and later on my street in particular over here at Arches Court. You you used to pick it up in the morning or during the day sometime, but I had my garbage out there all day long, and then you didn't get picked up until maybe that, either late that night or that early that next morning, Thursday morning. My question to you is, do y'all have enough trucks in your system for the town of Irmo, or
We do.
adding more trucks on? Or?
Well, to answer both, we do, and I did just pull in 2 trucks out of Pennsylvania. One showed up last weekend, the other one will be here this weekend. And they're kind of a unique truck. They're split bodies, so it's got, you can load recycle on this side and trash on this side, or yard waste here, and it keeps it separate so it doesn't contaminate the loads. But what we're looking on it, and that will help, I think, with the flow over here, because you guys, the one route we have 28 cul-de-sacs, right? And with the automated arms, the cul-de-sacs is what slows you down. Well, if we can keep them automated trucks running straight and take them little split bodies and swing in, it does 2 things. It keeps 2 trucks from in the little cul-de-sacs, which end up tearing up your blacktop eventually. Instead, we'll have 1 truck in there, but when it goes through, it'll take both. It'll take your recycle and your trash, and it can roll on through. And really increase our productivity as far as our drivers and getting in and out quicker. But last week we did run all the routes. I had all the right number of trucks, all the right drivers, and I think we was out of your town. It was I don't know, by 6 o'clock. Everything was wrapped up and we was done last week. And that was we had one little breakdown, so that was a good.
Well, listen, I'm a realist. I mean, if you guys are, if Irmo's growing to the point where, you used to have 10 trucks, now you need 11, and you need to add another truck, if you need to do that, you need to go ahead and do that, and then tell us so we can fix it in the contract next year or whatever. But the bottom line is that you signed up to pick up our garbage on Wednesdays, I believe. And if you can't do it all on Wednesdays, if you have to go to 2 days, you need to tell us that so we can plan on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
That way we don't have to get a phone call from Mr. Danko saying, you didn't pick my garbage up, today's Wednesday, garbage pickup day, when realistically, you might need 2 days to accomplish the same thing you did in the past on 1 day. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, we talked about that, and I think it helps us more being 1 day, just because it allows us, you got more people here, and if something does happen, you get a guy to help someone else, and it allows us to supervise the drivers a lot better, because they're all in one area, all in 1 day, and it's a lot easier better to manage.
That's fine.
But
I just want us to grow to the point where that 1 day that used to have 13,000 houses now got 16,000 houses.
No, I understand.
I don't know y'all.
And I think y'all had kind of said too on that was that you were gonna make these changes with the trucks, and then, I would say 6 months down the road, but at some point down the road, if things weren't a whole lot better, then we would at that time say, hey, this still ain't working in 2 days, but you gotta figure it out.
By all means, we definitely would do that, and that's not going to happen, but we would definitely do that, so that'd be no problem.
But I'll say this too, they pick up kind of my neighborhood early, and they were there, and they were running. I've never seen them. In fact, the recyclables they were doing, actually they were recyclables, they were doing at 6 when I came home. I don't know if they were just behind or what, but the guy was going down the road, and he would run over here and get a can, go dump it, run back, put it in the yard. He'd run over here and get a can, dump it, put it back in the yard, the truck was moving, he was running. I'd never seen that. So I think.
Well, we've had some meetings with them, and we've had some talks with them.
Because they were putting them back in the yards too.
Right.
I didn't see the problem of coming home and every trash can in the road, so I think.
Well, some of the complaints, and we did stress that, as much as we can get them back, and sometimes they're going to blow back out, obviously, but we try to get them back, and so I feel pretty confident where we are. I got a new ops manager, Travis Simpson. He's going to be all over it. He helped me fix Charlotte when I was in Charlotte as a GM, and they had some issues with some of their contracts, and he helped me dial those in, and we just re-signed both them contracts, one for 5 years and one for the other extension. So we did what we needed to do there and make council happy. And the only way you make council happy is to make the people happy. So I'm confident we'll get you what you want.
Okay, good.
Can I go ahead and give you all cards there? Yeah. That way you have them. In case you have any questions, I'm always available.
Thank
Does it have the midnight number on it?
It does have, next week I will be in Mexico, so I will not be on the phone, but
Sorry,
I'll be back.
mention email.
Yeah, email's on
I
there.
didn't get a card.
I'll give you one here today.
Oh, okay.
You guys got any questions for me, or? I know it's been
I
a,
think that's it. Y'all got any questions? Any more?
again, you can always call me, and I'll be glad to come and meet and talk to you about whatever you need to talk about, so. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is discussion of the house on Witchwood. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit maybe. And while this is on here, this is that house that we had that problem with a couple of years last year. A lady came and the pool was in, that house burnt down, and it was like, I'd say 80% burnt down, but there was some of the house still standing. And they had a pool, and they weren't keeping the pool clean either, whoever owned the house at that time. I think there was a problem with the mortgage company, said it wasn't theirs, the insurance said they would cover it, and that kind of thing, and the people that lived there. But she complained about that, and we either did a lien on some stuff, and maybe a lawsuit too, I can't remember. All I know is she called the other day and said that she had got a call from Jake about the lawsuit being dropped. I didn't know anything about that. But I knew there was a lien that had been settled, but not the lawsuit. But she was a little bit upset because she said she called that company and they gave her 6 months to do anything. She's like, I don't want to put up with that for 6 more months. But I think since that time, Bob has talked to you, and I think there's been an agreement to pump the pool out, and it's been pumped out, but yeah, just kind of fill us in on
What's
that.
happened is, when she first came here, nobody would help her. DHEC wouldn't help her, the county wouldn't help her, nobody would help her. So she came to us and basically said, hey, what can you do? We talked, town authorized me to basically bring an action to try to get the thing knocked down or fixed. So what I did was I filed a lawsuit taking the position that it was a nuisance. It was a general common nuisance, that it was a bad thing, it was dangerous, it was nasty, it was breeding mosquitoes. Filed a lawsuit after we did the title search. I had to pay to get the title search done. Title search determined it was owned by one of these companies that buy these things in just gross. They buy maybe 500 of them at one time. They didn't even know the house was burned down. Well, it turned out that there were 4 or 5 different companies around the country that had the same name. So I'm calling these people trying to find who actually it is that owned the property. Eventually chased them down to a company in Texas, which refused to take my telephone calls. I sent letters to them, no calls, no nothing. They just ignored everything we did. So I sued them. And basically, I got good service on them. Somebody accepted service on the complaint. So I had them sued, and they didn't respond to the lawsuit. They just ignored the lawsuit. So I'm sitting here with this lawsuit out here, and they defaulted on it, but that doesn't do me a whole heck of a lot of good. We're still on the docket, lawsuit's still pending. So I'm trying to move forward to force them to do something. So I filed the affidavit of default and moved for a default hearing. And at that point in time, I sent them a notice of the default and the order of default, or whatever it was we sent. We sent them the default paperwork. And finally somebody called me. And it was like, okay, what's up? And I go, well, I have sued you and you've gone to default, and we've got this place in town that's garbage. You know, we've got to get it cleaned up, but we'll get back to you. Well, they finally called and said, we've got somebody who wants to buy it. So these folks called, and they were incredibly nice people. It was like, Mr. Moore, what do you need in order to have this thing worked out? I said, look, we're not suing you for money damages. We're just suing to knock it down and to bring it into compliance with town code. She said, well, we want to buy it, but it's going to take us a while because we want to rehabilitate the house. And I'm going, look, rehabilitate the house all you want to. We've got to get the swimming pool fixed up. And you know, somebody needs to be paying me for the actual out-of-pocket expenses I've got, plus something for the time that I've had to spend chasing you guys around for wherever. So the lady who's buying the house calls and basically says, we will commit to you that we will within a reasonable period of time either knock it down or begin serious remodeling of the house. And I'm going, you know, okay. So the bank agreed to pay the fees and the costs, and the lady agreed that she'd take title and that she'd be responsible for making sure that they started to work in a timely fashion, orderly fashion. Well, Lord, if I got a judgment against him, it's going to take me God knows how long in order to get permission from the court just to be able to knock it down. So the thing works out. About 2 weeks ago, they closed. They sold the property to the purchaser for $2,500. And then I got a call from Miss Novak, just not happy with me, and I'm like, ma'am, I've been wanting to try to help you, you know. So I think I hope we had an understanding that, look, we've gotten something worked out for you. So I called the owner and basically said, look, you've got to get this swimming pool straightened out now. Yes, sir, we will. And I got a call back from them yesterday morning indicating that over the weekend the pool is pumped out, and they've had a very pleasant conversation with Ms. Novak. Not Ms. Novak. What he said was the neighbor, which I'm assuming Ms. Novak. So they're supposed to be paying me back something for my time, which is like $1,500, and my filing fees, and you know, nothing for the title searches and stuff I had. Then I'll eat that. I'm not worried about that. And they've got a written commitment that the thing is going to be either knocked down or renovation started. The lawsuit is still there. It's not dismissed. It's still there. And I'll dismiss it once the commitment to do the work is actually done. So we've got an agreement with the owner and the bank. The work is going to be done. Swimming pool's fixed. They're basically making a small payment for the work that was done to basically get them to this point. And hopefully the neighbors they should be loving the town of Irmo because we're the only ones that did anything to fix it. That's where we are.
And they'll keep that pool clean? I mean, I don't know, did they put a tarp on it or did they just pump it out every so often?
I think the deal basically is this. These people who bought it apparently are in the business of rehabilitating property. So they are aggressively going to either do something with it, but they promised to keep it clean and properly updated during the renovation process. And apparently now they each have everybody's telephone numbers, so if they do have a problem, instead of calling us, they can call them. But if they have a problem, they can call me and I'll take care of it. But, you know, I was sort of happy with the result of this thing. We're either going to get
And I think she's happy if it's cleaned out, because that was the main thing she was talking about. She didn't want to spend summer in her house and not in the backyard because of the mosquitoes, so it's fun.
I've tried to call her 5 or 6 times.
She's a nurse, and I think her shifts are always different.
But, you know, we've sort of gone the extra mile on this one, and we've sort of gotten decent results. So I'm pretty good.
I think she'll be.
Should be.
And she hadn't called back, so I'm guessing she's happy.
Hopefully she's happy.
And I think, yeah, as long as it's kind of clean and no mosquitoes, I think that was all she was concerned
Look, I agree with her.
Next item is presentation by citizens. This is where anyone who wants to come speak to council about anything, whether it's on the agenda or not on the agenda, may do so at this time. We just ask you to give us.
Just because we haven't been here long enough. I'm Jack Buck, Keep the Midlands Beautiful.
I didn't even get through.
Oh, sorry. I'm just trying to, I know we haven't been here very long. I just wanted to make mention about the recycling event this Saturday. I know it's already been brought up, but it is a regional recycling event. It's the only event of its kind because we are partnering with Richland County and Lexington County, the town of Irmo, South Carolina Agricultural Department. So it's very unique, and we're thankful that we're holding it here in the town of Irmo because this is, right in the middle, as the lady said before, open to Lexington, Richland County residents. And the list is huge of what you can bring to an event like this, because we are having tires, hazardous waste, so you can bring out things like paint, which we don't normally accept. Also pesticides. The South Carolina Agriculture Department will be accepting things like that we don't normally take. So have a look on keepthemidlandsbeautiful.org. There's a flyer there, and it's also, I think, on the Irmo channel, so you can take a look at those things. Tires will accept up to 8 per resident, and there'll also be shred there, and so lots of different things. Also wanted to say a thank you to Councilman Youngener for coming out and volunteering at our Good Clean Fun Saturday event last weekend on Coldstream Drive. I really appreciate you volunteering with our Keep the Midlands Beautiful volunteers, and coming out and donating your time. We really appreciate our volunteers, and we couldn't do 7,000 volunteers a year and over 208,000 pounds of litter that we pick up each year without dedicated volunteers like you, Councilman, so thank you so much.
How many volunteers do you expect on Saturday?
We'll have volunteers from the county, Lexington. We'll have our Keep the Midlands Beautiful volunteers. We've got some Lexington County deputy. I know your chief will be out there volunteering. So
About 50 people, is that?
there probably will be close to about 30 volunteers. Mostly we have a lot of traffic control volunteers because we'll be going in the opposite direction. And then we'll have volunteers that'll be helping unload people's cars. We like people to stay in their cars, so we keep the traffic moving, because we do expect from 8 a.m. to 12 o'clock we'll be open an extra hour for this type of event. We're going to start a little bit earlier. We do expect there to be a good turnout for this.
What time is it again?
8 a.m. to noon.
Did you say you were changing the direction?
Yes, we normally have them come in the first entrance, but we're going to have them come the other way around, go all the way around, and they're going to serpentine through, and it'll be well signed. We have sandwich boards. There'll be signs for each location. If you have shred, if you have e-waste, if you have the biofuel, the cooking oil, percentage of all of that will be donated back to District 5. If you have scrap, if you have tires, you'll have a direction person there helping you, but also you'll serpentine around and come in, and also have somebody tracking whether you're a Lexington or Richland County person, so it'll go back for metrics for the counties.
I have one side question.
Yes.
This is really off the record on everything.
Oh, okay.
But I know you're from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I got this email from this guy last week?
Last week.
Terrence. He's from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know him or not.
23 million people, probably not.
Yeah, I think Chief Buck got a copy of that too.
We don't know him.
You don't know him?
No.
Hey, nobody does. His name was Terrence from the side. I thought he might be known.
And also I do want to make mention that with the 47% cut, if you were to get that cut, I know that your support for organizations like mine would be gone. So I do hope you take that into consideration. Into consideration when you're looking at those changes that you do, because Keep the Midlands Beautiful support comes from municipalities like yourself, from West Columbia, from Chapin, and also from the county funding. So I so appreciate when we are funded by municipalities so that we can put on events like this, and I certainly look at that, and did write to both the representatives to say how troubled I was when I saw and read that bill. So thank you so much.
Well, according to a lot of people, it probably isn't going to pass in its general $100 cap form, but I don't know about the other stuff. They might work on that. But So, thank you. Anyone else? No one? No executive session needed? None? Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
And a second? Second. And all in favor?